A boy's dream is to become the greatest swordsman under heaven, but the thing he does most every day is lie in bed and sleep. His father is furious about it, but with his mother doting on him so much, there is really nothing anyone can do. In this household, the person he fears most is his older brother, Wee San-ho. And today, it seems Wee San-ho has finally come back. The boy instantly turned pale and asked in a trembling voice, "Brother, when did you get back?" But the first thing Wee San-ho did after returning was point at the candle in front of them and say coldly, "Try splitting that candle in half with your sword. Let me see how much you've improved in the 3 years I've been away." Faced with such a strict older brother, the boy never dared to resist and could only pick up his sword and walk over. Seeing how he kept dragging his feet, Wee San-ho frowned in annoyance. "Hurry the hell up." The boy closed his eyes and desperately tried to recall the pitifully average swordsmanship he had learned. In the next second, he raised his sword and slashed at the candle. He was rusty, sure, but cutting down a single candle should not have been that hard for him. But the moment he turned back around, the sight in front of him left him completely at a loss. The candle stood still, perfectly fine. A cold dread washed over him. He had only one thought. He was so dead. Wee San-ho's calm expression was terrifying in a way anger never could be. "Looks like these past 3 years were a complete waste. You haven't improved at all." His brother did not say much, but those few words were enough to fill the boy with a crushing sense of unease. At that moment, he had a feeling tonight's dinner was about to become the hardest meal he had swallowed in the past 3 years. Even with sweat pouring down his back, he still forced himself to act like nothing was wrong. But then, the thing he feared most still happened. Wee San-ho actually suggested to their parents that he be sent off to a martial arts school. At that point, the boy knew he was truly done for. While his mother looked worried sick, his father's grin was practically stretching to the back of his head. As for his younger sister Wee Soo-yeon's reluctant, teary-eyed expression, Wee Yeon-ho could only respond with helpless silence. Of course, no matter where he ended up, nothing was going to stop Wee Yeon-ho from pursuing his sacred right to sleep. The saddle was hard as stone, and before long, Wee Yeon-ho felt like his butt was about to split open. Finally, he spotted 2 people lying on a small dirt mound ahead and immediately shouted, "Brother, look! There are already people resting over there! We should go rest too!" But Wee San-ho's face turned grave, and he did not answer Wee Yeon-ho at all. Right in front of him, Wee San-ho swung himself off the horse and went ahead alone to check the situation. Still wearing that lazy, half-awake look, Wee Yeon-ho followed behind and muttered, "What are you even doing, brother?" But the scene waiting ahead left him completely stunned. The 2 people lying there were already dead. Wee Yeon-ho's scalp went numb on the spot, and he could not help grumbling that he had been living just fine at home. Yet his brother had dragged him all the way out here just to see something like this. But Wee San-ho paid no attention to his complaints and stepped forward to examine the wounds on the corpses. Both men had been killed by the blossoming palm, the signature technique of a notorious lustful rogue from the western regions. Wee Yeon-ho was baffled. Why would a lustful rogue kill 2 men? Wee San-ho's expression darkened even more. Since these 2 corpses had been struck by the blossoming palm, that could only mean the lustful rogue had attacked the woman here as well, which meant that somewhere nearby, a woman was still in danger. In the very next second, Wee San-ho did not even bother to warn him and shot off like a streak of light. Wee Yeon-ho froze where he stood and blurted out, "Brother, is this really how you treat your little brother? You are not seriously leaving me here alone to guard these corpses, are you?" But Wee San-ho ignored every word of it, leaving behind a dumbfounded Wee Yeon-ho standing there by himself beside the horrifying bodies. The more he looked, the colder his sweat ran. Thank heaven the 2 old horses were still there with him. Otherwise, he'd be completely screwed. As if things were not bad enough, dark storm clouds began to gather overhead before long. The more Wee Yeon-ho thought about it, the more miserable he felt. Being stuck out in the wilderness, soaking in the rain beside 2 corpses, was just about the worst thing he could imagine. Before long, night fully fell, and his brother still had not returned, which only made Wee Yeon-ho more and more terrified. Then, from somewhere deep in the distant valley, the roar of wild beasts seemed to echo out. That bone-chilling sound nearly scared the soul out of him. He hurriedly told himself he had to do something fast, or he might really end up as food for the beasts. In the next instant, another bolt of lightning tore through the sky, making him jump out of his skin. Wee Yeon-ho genuinely felt like he was doomed. But when he thought of those 2 men left exposed in the wilderness, destined to become beast fodder, he still gritted his teeth and, with tremendous effort, hauled both corpses onto the horses' backs. If he did not find shelter soon, Wee Yeon-ho felt he might really get struck dead by lightning. As if the heavens were mocking him, another bolt suddenly crashed down, startling even the horses into a panicked leap. With one slip underfoot, Wee Yeon-ho tumbled straight down the slope. When he woke up again, he found that he seemed to be inside a cave. Wee Yeon-ho was full of confusion. What kind of place was this? But no matter what, at least that damned lightning was gone, and that alone brought him a bit of relief. On top of that, the 2 old horses were surprisingly smart. They had somehow known this cave could shelter them from the rain. To keep them from wandering off, Woo Yeon-ho tied them to a large rock. Once all that was done, the exhaustion and drowsiness from the journey began to hit him in waves. So he left a mark at the cave entrance, just in case his brother returned and could not find him. At last, he could finally get some proper sleep. Even though he was still worried about his brother, that did not stop him from falling asleep one bit. Woo Yeon-ho slept unbelievably well. He did not even notice when the two old horses tied to the rock had run off. But right at that moment, something strange happened. A blue screen of light suddenly appeared around Woo Yeon-ho's body. Asleep as he was, he noticed none of it. And that blue glow actually lifted him into the air. Without him feeling a thing, it carried him straight into a stone wall. Only then did Woo Yeon-ho finally sense that something was wrong and slowly open his eyes. He was still groggy, blinking in confusion. Where is this? But in the next instant, a voice suddenly rang out beside his ear. The one chosen by fate. The voice scared the life out of him, and he crashed hard onto the ground. In the very next second, a sphere of light appeared before his eyes, and somehow, that glowing orb was actually speaking. I welcome all who come here in pursuit of destiny. I am the successor to Baek Muhan, the Sword of Radiance. You are the one chosen by fate, and I, having long cast off the shackles of flesh, now speak across time itself to deliver my will to you. At the sight of that, Woo Yeon-ho nearly lost his soul in fright. He had never imagined this cave would actually be haunted, but the glowing orb told him not to be afraid, saying that it was merely a remnant consciousness left behind in this place. And Woo Yeon-ho was the one destined to inherit that will. Once he calmed down, Woo Yeon-ho suddenly felt that this whole scene seemed strangely familiar. A cave, a hidden encounter. Could this be a fated meeting? The more Woo Yeon-ho thought about it, the more excited he became. If some expert really was about to pass down a peerless art to him, then maybe he would not have to go to that damn dojo after all. The orb continued speaking. I shall pass the radiant sword art onto you. So from this day on, you must train here without pause in the art of magic techniques. The blood flowing through your veins carries the inheritance of my extraordinary talent. With only 30 years of cultivation here, you will be able to recreate my unmatched power. Woo Yeon-ho, who had been thrilled a second ago, instantly went calm after hearing that. Wait, you want me to stay here and cultivate for 30 years? Maybe he was not the chosen one after all. So perhaps this honored senior should look for someone else instead. The moment Woo Yeon-ho turned as if to leave, the old man flew into a rage. In the next instant, he sealed off the only stone gate leading out. Woo Yeon-ho looked helpless. What a shameless old geezer. Then the old man burst into triumphant laughter. That stone gate is 3 meters thick. With your current strength, breaking it open is harder than moving a mountain. After that, the old man switched expressions and started shamelessly sweet-talking him. If you learn my martial art, opening that gate will be as easy as slicing paper. But Woo Yeon-ho remained completely unmoved by the sales pitch and simply pulled a short dagger from his robes. Then he crouched down and began digging into the stone gate with it. The old man stood behind him with utter confidence. With your current level, even if I gave you 10 years, maybe 8, you still would not break through. Woo Yeon-ho ignored him completely. If the old man had not dropped that gate in the first place, he would have been gone already. The old man stared at Woo Yeon-ho's stubborn back, trembling in frustration. But in the very next second, he put on a flattering smile again and continued persuading him. At least give it a try. I will find a way to have you master it within 20 years. A little tired from digging, Woo Yeon-ho leaned against the wall and said lazily, 20 years is way too long. If it were 3 years, I might consider it. The old man let out a bitter laugh. Mastering his martial art in 3 years was simply impossible. Woo Yeon-ho stayed calm. If it is impossible, then forget it. But in the next second, the old man's face flushed red, looking like he'd been constipated for 3 straight months. Seeing that, Woo Yeon-ho could only lay down his final bottom line. 5 years. At most, I will study under you for 5 years. And at that very moment, the old man seemed to make up his mind. No matter the cost, I will make you the greatest under heaven within 5 years. Hearing that, Woo Yeon-ho was finally tempted, and he could not help glancing sideways at the old man. After all, existing in this kind of martial incarnation form was something he had never even heard of in this world. And if he could become the greatest under heaven in only 5 years, then no matter how he counted it, it was a bargain. In that case, the deal was happily settled. Next, Woo Yeon-ho began his training inside the cave. But before any of that could start, he first needed a proper good sleep. The moment the old man saw how lazy he was being, he flew into a rage. You damn brat! Get up right now. But Woo Yeon-ho felt genuinely wronged. You're a ghost. Of course you don't need sleep. But as a human, I need enough sleep every single day. Even though the old man was furious, for the sake of passing on his legacy, he could only force a smile and practically beg Woo Yeon-ho to get up and train. Woo Yeon-ho let out a yawn and said lazily, training the moment I wake up? Can't you at least let me ease into it a little? The old man was so angry he nearly jumped on the spot. At your pace, forget 5 years. Even 50 years wouldn't be enough. But Wai Yun Ho was completely unfazed and seriously asked, "This is way too exhausting. Isn't there some more reliable and easier way to learn?" Hearing that, the old man was so enraged he almost popped a 300-year-old blood vessel. To think that, in order to pass on his martial art, he had to deal with someone like this. At that moment, even this old man who had once stood unmatched under heaven felt a deep wave of loneliness, because he was now nothing more than a remnant of consciousness, and there were many things he simply could not do. Suddenly, a spark flashed through Wai Yun Ho's mind. He remembered that earlier, the old man had lowered that massive stone gate. If that was the case, then could the old man use that same power to directly control his body? That way, he wouldn't have to lift a finger. The moment he heard that, the old man looked utterly dead inside. He weakly explained that earlier, he had merely used ki to move objects from afar, and then used stones to trigger the mechanism that lowered the gate. But in the very next second, the old man seemed to think of something, and right after that, he burst into excited laughter. How had he not realized it sooner? He could still control stones. At that moment, the old man was overjoyed, his eyes almost bulging apart, as if he had just seized onto an incredibly important clue. His expression only grew more and more excited. But from Wai Yun Ho's point of view, the whole thing felt deeply off. Had this old man gone a little insane? Then, in the very next second, a stone slammed into the wall right beside him. With wild delight written all over his face, the old man shouted, "Thanks to your reminder just now, I finally figured it out. Even without a body, I can still move stones whenever I want." A terrible sense of danger instantly exploded in Wai Yun Ho's chest. Countless stones slowly rose into the air before the old man. Cold sweat poured down Wai Yun Ho's back as he hurriedly pleaded, "Senior, I'm sorry. Please don't do this." But the next second, the stones came crashing toward his body like a storm of rain, and it was under that merciless downpour of stone that Wai Yun Ho finally began his real training. What he did not expect, though, was that the torment did not stop during the day. At night, the old man could even enter his dreams and continue training him there. And just like that, Wai Yun Ho's 5 years of brutal, hellish training began. His swordsmanship also improved bit by bit through that relentless daily torment. 5 years passed like a flash, gone before he even realized it. At last, the old man's legacy had been passed on, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. And on that very day, Wai Yun Ho finally opened the gate that led back into the outside world. But at the same time, the old man's martial will was also about to fade away. That was because 5 years earlier, he had made Wai Yun Ho swallow his cultivation core, and after taking it, Wai Yun Ho had not needed to eat a single thing during all 5 years inside the cave. 5 years of living side by side had already built a deep bond between them. With reddened eyes, Wai Yun Ho could not help muttering bitterly, "That old man said he was going to train me for 30 years, and now he's the one leaving first." He instinctively reached out, trying to catch that fading figure, but tears were already streaming down Wai Yun Ho's face, and only one question remained in his heart. Why did he have to be the one left behind alone? As the last wisp of smoke drifted away, only Wai Yun Ho remained in the cave, surrounded by dead silence. But right after that, he discovered that the old man had tricked him one more time. Even after 5 years of training, his martial cultivation was still not truly complete. The Sword Emperor had clearly long worried that Wai Yun Ho's lazy nature would make him stop training halfway, so he had planted a special mechanism inside his body in advance. That meant if the experience and techniques Wai Yun Ho accumulated ever failed to keep up with the maturation speed of the inner core, the core would begin to devour him instead. And once that backlash started, it would drain away his internal energy until it killed him. A chill crept down Wai Yun Ho's spine, and he could only grit his teeth and curse. What a vicious old man. As if that were not enough, the old man had even written the unfinished part of the training on his clothes. The moment Wai Yun Ho saw those words, he was furious. That old man really won't let me go, not even in death. On top of that, the old man had even planned out his route after leaving the cave. According to the arrangement he left behind, Wai Yun Ho's first stop after leaving was to find the kingdom's great sage and stay by that person's side for a while. Wai Yun Ho felt both annoyed and helpless. He had originally planned to go home first, but now he could only deal with all of this before returning. After putting everything in order, Wai Yun Ho, utterly alone, finally set out on his journey. But what he did not know was that at the cave entrance, a white figure was slowly beginning to emerge, and that white figure was none other than the Sword Emperor, who had supposedly already vanished, still wearing the same crazed grin as before. "You brat, if you dare slack off again, you'll end up shriveled like a mummy. This old man will never allow that." But in the very next second, the Sword Emperor's expression softened again. If that brat kept being as lazy as before, then all this martial training would really have gone to waste. As he watched Wai Yun Ho walk farther and farther away, The Sword Emperor's figure slowly faded into the air once more. Time passed, and in a distant city, a young man was asking Beggar's sect branch leader Jong-il for information. This young man was so gaunt he looked almost like a mummy, yet he still spoke up. "I heard the Beggar's sect is the best place for information. Could I ask the branch leader about something?" Jong-il immediately found it strange. Who exactly was this dried corpse-looking guy standing in front of him? But he still made his stance clear right away. "If you want information, you'll have to pay for it." Jong-il then looked the man over more carefully. The voice sounded extremely young, yet the body was so thin and weak it barely looked human. Could they somehow be in the same trade? But right after that, Jong-il made his position clear. Even if they really were in the same trade, there was no way he would hand over information for free. Hearing that, Wei Yunho instantly got irritated. Did he really look that much like a beggar? But Jong-il said it with a straight face. Not only did Wei Yunho look exactly like one, but with that face alone, he could absolutely become one of the elite among beggars. If he was willing to join the beggar sect and actually beg for money, Jong-il would even give him the information for free. But even after falling this far, Wei Yunho still refused to become a beggar for real. And yet, once night came, he suddenly discovered that he actually had a natural gift for this kind of thing. His earnings for that single day far surpassed all the others in the same trade. Jong-il was overjoyed. "You're unbelievable! In just half a day, you made what takes me half a year." The next moment, his eyes turned serious, and he patted his chest as he declared, "Whatever information you want, I'll tell you all of it." Wei Yunho did not hold back either. He directly asked for a full list of all famous sages and every bit of information about them, along with a list of all renowned blacksmiths. Jong-il agreed to the deal and told him to come back in 7 days. But by that point, Wei Yunho had already flopped down to lie there. Looking at that absurdly lazy posture, Jong-il could not help breaking out in cold sweat. At the same time, a piece of news was spreading in a panic through the nearby beggar sect members. Wei Yunho's arrival seemed to be seriously damaging their business. And on top of that, everyone thought his outfit and equipment were utterly unprofessional. But the moment Wei Yunho actually sat down there, they finally understood what peak begging actually looked like. Making money, it turned out, could really be this easy. Jong-il had been getting more and more irritable lately because there was one thing that had been tormenting him nonstop. He was starting to regret ever taking in someone this unbelievably lazy. And yet, this same man's performance kept crushing everyone else's. Every time he thought about it, Jong-il felt like crying on the spot. He was a dignified beggar sect branch leader, yet he had somehow fallen to the point of running errands for some dirt-poor tramp like this. But if he really threw this bastard out, then all the people under him would probably end up starving. What was even worse was that this guy really knew how to enjoy life, insisting on getting a massage every single day. Finally one day, Wei Yunho demanded that Jong-il hand over the information he had gathered. Jong-il was instantly overjoyed inside. Was this nightmare finally about to end? But when Wei Yunho opened the information, what he saw left him disappointed. He frowned at once and complained in annoyance. "After all the effort I've been putting in every day, this is all I get?" Jong-il took the report back, and after reading it, his expression also turned cold, because the things written on it were practically worthless. After thinking it over for a while, Jong-il ultimately decided to take Wei Yunho to meet someone. Under his lead, the two of them soon arrived at a beggar sect branch, where a woman was already standing before them, and that woman was none other than Guy Narang, the leader of this beggar sect branch. Guy Narang clearly held a very high position. Even Jong-il, a branch chief in his own right, treated her with extreme respect as he asked her for some information. But Guy Narang obviously was not having it. She said coldly, "You dare come to me asking for information? You should know very well that your side and ours are natural enemies." Jong-il instantly broke into a cold sweat and hurried to explain that this was not a matter between their factions. He had only brought her a client. Guy Narang's expression turned icy. Should I take this as mockery? Or as provocation? No matter what, she had no intention of selling them any information. Seeing where this was going, Wei Yunho immediately clamped a hand over Jong-il's mouth and told Guy Narang that he did not belong to any sect at all. But this woman was clearly already angry. If they kept playing games with her like this, then neither of them should dream of walking out of that door alive. And yet, at exactly that moment, Wei Yunho calmly spoke up. "Looks like the beggar sect is not that professional after all. You can't even tell whether I belong to your own people." What a joke. At those words, Guy Narang turned her head. Then she asked her subordinates whether that man really was a member of the beggar's sect. A reply quickly came from the hall. Although they did not know his exact identity, they could say for certain that he absolutely was not one of the beggar's sect. Wei Yunho remained perfectly calm. Since the misunderstanding had been cleared up, could they continue their information deal now? But this time, the woman was clearly, truly angered. "I'm not selling anything. Get out right now." Guy Narang closed her eyes tightly, as if forcing down her fury. "No matter how much money you offer, I will not sell you any information." But right then, Jang Il's voice reached her ears. If you won't even do business when it comes to your door, your branch won't last much longer at this rate. That line finally shattered the last of Gainar Rang's restraint and made her explode on the spot. In the next second, she shouted into the hall, "Someone come teach these two a lesson in respect." The instant her words fell, a man sprang out from nowhere and launched an attack at them. That palm strike was terrifyingly fast, arriving before them in the blink of an eye. But at that very moment, Wee Yeon-ho shoved aside the panicking Jang Il. Then, in the next instant, he threw out a single punch. Gainar Rang, who had been furious just a moment ago, instantly turned calm because this man, who looked like a dried corpse, had dropped the branch guard with a single punch. Even Wee Yeon-ho himself looked a little awkward about it. He spread his hands and apologized, saying, "Sorry, that was just my instinct kicking in." If they had told him beforehand that this was an ambush, he definitely would have held back a little. Gainar Rang immediately broke out in cold sweat, and even her tone changed. "We did not realize such an honored guest had come. Perhaps now they could sit down and talk properly." But in the very next second, her expression returned to that same calm as before. Still, that did not mean they could get information for free. After all, they had injured her guard. Gainar Rang's gaze turned sharp and cold. So in the end, they would still have to pay some price. That strange shift in the woman's attitude left both Wee Yeon-ho and Jang Il confused. What price did she still want from them? Gainar Rang's face seemed to return to that same proud, aloof look from before. "In this world, there has only ever been one kind of price," she said. "Blood for blood." And it was obvious now that she had only been stalling, because 4 more experts had already appeared inside the hall. Seeing that, Wee Yeon-ho stayed perfectly calm and could only wonder whether people these days were all this good at putting on a show. Gainar Rang also seemed to regain her confidence and said coldly, "Since he has already hurt one of ours, neither of you is leaving here today." As she spoke, a look of open disgust surfaced on her face, especially when her eyes landed on that skin and bones scarecrow of a man. She clearly wanted Wee Yeon-ho to learn exactly how the word regret was written. In the next instant, the several experts under her command all charged at once. The one at the front, in particular, carried the savage bloodlust of a man who lived on the edge of a blade, as if he could already smell their blood. And yet, Wee Yeon-ho remained standing where he was, still baffled at how quickly this woman could change her face. He had only wanted to buy a little information, yet now she was trying to kill them for it. Then, in the very next second, an overwhelming force burst from Wee Yeon-ho's body. With just one move, the so-called 4 great experts were all sent collapsing in defeat, and Gainar Rang, who had been brimming with hostility just moments earlier, finally realized that this was not a man she could afford to provoke. What she did not know was that Wee Yeon-ho was actually the last direct disciple of the Sword Saint from 300 years ago. And because of that, Gainar Rang finally agreed to hand over every piece of information Wee Yeon-ho wanted. But Jang Il, who had come here with him, was not nearly so lucky, because Gainar Rang clearly still intended to have a very thorough talk with him. So by the time it was all over, Jang Il had ended up in his current miserable state. After suffering that loss, Jang Il could only angrily complain to Wee Yeon-ho about how awful that woman was. But in the next moment, he suddenly seemed to sense that something was very wrong, because the sight of Gainar Rang personally coming to deliver the information to Wee Yeon-ho nearly scared the soul out of him. Gainar Rang stated that although she had provided the information, there would still be an intelligence fee of 5 taels of silver. But when Wee Yeon-ho searched himself from head to toe, he found that he only had 5 copper coins on him. So he immediately declared that, if that was the case, he would simply go back to the Beggar's sect and continue begging until he repaid the debt. The moment he heard Wee Yeon-ho say he was going back to the Beggar's sect, Jang Il remembered those miserable days of slaving away for him and immediately clung to his leg in panic. After an immense internal struggle, Jang Il finally made that painful decision. He took out all the money Wee Yeon-ho had previously earned while with the Beggar's sect, then added in his own secret stash, and barely managed to scrape together 5 taels of silver. Even though Wee Yeon-ho did not like this woman, he still had to admit that the quality of the intelligence Gainar Rang provided was truly top tier. After that, Wee Yeon-ho asked Gainar Rang whether she could help send a letter back to his home. Under normal circumstances, that kind of service would cost even more, but Gainar Rang was clearly interested in him and said that as long as he answered a few of her questions, she could waive the fee. But when she learned that Wee Yeon-ho was only 17 years old, she froze completely. How could someone only 17 years old possess this kind of strength? But the moment Wee Yeon-ho told her his name, Gainar Rang's brows furrowed deeply, as if she were rapidly putting something together. Then, in the next second, she suddenly realized it. He was actually the second young master of the Wei family. It turned out that for all these years, the Wei family had been entrusting them to search for Wee Yeon-ho's whereabouts. Gainar Rang also said that she knew Wee San-ho, Wee Yeon-ho's older brother, and that if the letter were sent back to the Wei household, it would take around 10 days to arrive. Then she handed Wee Yeon-ho a silk handkerchief. According to her, this handkerchief was the symbol of an honored guest of her family, and with it, Wee Yeon-ho could call upon her family's warriors whenever he wished. In the end, Gai Na-rang also frankly told him why she was making an exception for him. It was because she had no wish for her family to come into conflict with the Wei family. Faced with a woman who was both calculating and clever, Wee Yeon-ho merely replied that everything from before would be written off. In the end, things on Wei Yeon-ho's side had gone very smoothly, while Jong-il, trailing behind him, remained utterly dejected. Looking at Jong-il like that, Wee Yeon-ho could only lower his voice and console him. Money is the kind of thing you can't bring with you when you're born, and you can't take it with you when you die. For a beggar like me, having money in the first place was already wrong. Hearing that, Jang-il clenched his teeth so hard they nearly cracked. But the moment he remembered just how absurdly strong Wee Yeon-ho was, he could only swallow the rage back down. Now that Wei Yeon-ho's business was finally done, Jang-il was ready to say his last goodbye and leave. But right then, Wei Yeon-ho suddenly threw an arm over Jang-il's shoulder, making him snap in annoyance. "What is it now with you?" Wei Yeon-ho, meanwhile, sounded completely shameless about it. "It's nothing much. I'm just out of money right now. So could you lend me some?" After hearing that, Jang-il looked like he was about to explode on the spot. Following the intelligence provided by Gai Na-rang, Wee Yeon-ho made his way to Hanrim Grand Academy. And the Grand Scholar Mun Yu-hwan there was precisely the man the Sword Emperor had instructed him to stay with for a time before disappearing. Mun Yu-hwan's daughter, Mun Moonji, came in to report that a guest had arrived asking to see him. Mun Yu-hwan was puzzled at first, because he had not arranged to meet anyone that day. But when his daughter told him the visitor had come to play Go with him, his eyes lit up at once, as if playing Go were one of the most important things in his life. Under Mun Munji's guidance, Wee Yeon-ho finally met Mun Yu-hwan. Wei Yeon-ho politely greeted him and asked whether his sudden visit might disturb his quiet cultivation. Mun Yu-hwan, graceful and courteous, invited him to sit down and said with a smile, "A guest is still a guest. So you came to play a game with me?" Wee Yeon-ho knew very well that this man was a true fanatic when it came to Go. So the moment he sat down, he calmly said that playing Go was the only thing he knew how to do. Mun Yu-hwan displayed the bearing of a true gentleman. "In that case, let us begin with one game. I will take white. Please, you go first." But even so, Mun Yu-hwan did not actually think much of Wei Yeon-ho. To him, the man looked like nothing more than a down-and-out beggar, and he simply did not believe someone like that could possess truly profound skill. But the instant Wei Yeon-ho placed his first stone, Mun Yu-hwan felt an invisible pressure bearing down on him. This man was absolutely a master. That kind of aura could not be faked. What was even more shocking was how quickly Wei Yeon-ho placed his stones, as though he did not need to think at all. Before long, Mun Yu-hwan was already being pushed into a disadvantage, and even the hand holding his stones began to tremble slightly, every move becoming painfully difficult. What had once seemed to him like an ordinary board of black and white stones now felt like a sea whipped into violent waves, and hidden in those surging tides, it was as if some terrifying beast lay in wait, ready to lunge at any moment. That single match left cold sweat running down Mun Yu-hwan's back, his mind completely reeling from the shock. What he did not know, however, was that back in the cave, the Sword Emperor had also been obsessed with Go and often forced Wei Yeon-ho to play against him. And every time he lost, his training would become 10 times harsher. That was exactly why, under that relentless day-after-day pressure, Wee Yeon-ho had been forged into the extraordinary Go player he was now. Needless to say, he won this match with ease, and Mun Yu-hwan was utterly won over by his skill. When the game ended, the players did not leave at once, but Wei Yeon-ho clearly had nowhere else to go. Mun Yu-hwan obviously saw through his situation and took the initiative to tell him he could stay here for the time being, and that a room would be arranged for him. After saying that, Mun Yu-hwan instructed Mun Munji to prepare a room and a change of clothes for Wee Yeon-ho, and to bring him to the bathhouse as well, so he could wash away all the dust of the road. Even when Wei Yeon-ho admitted he did not have a single coin to his name, Mun Yu-hwan only waved it off cheerfully. "A guest is still a guest. How could I possibly charge you?" Mun Yu-hwan had only one request in return. He hoped Wei Yeon-ho would occasionally play a few rounds of Go with him, or with the guests who came to visit. Seeing how courteous the man was, Wei Yeon-ho naturally found it hard to refuse. After a brief farewell, he followed Mun Munji toward the bathhouse. The moment he sank into the bath, a look of pure satisfaction spread across Wei Yeon-ho's face. It felt so damn good he never wanted to get out. And as he soaked there, he even began to feel that his skin was somehow becoming clearer and healthier without him realizing it. At that moment, Mun Munji had also finished preparing a clean set of clothes for him, and yet there was still a trace of confusion in her eyes. She simply could not understand why her father would take in a guest who looked no different from a beggar. But in the very next second, it was as if Mun Munji had seen something she absolutely should not have seen, and she froze on the spot. Then, flustered, she hurriedly shoved the clothes into Wei Yeon-ho's hands. And yet, in one brief moment, she still could not help sneaking another glance, suddenly realizing that the man in front of her did not seem quite as unbearable as before. But judging from the expression on Munmunji's face, even after seeing Wai Yun-ho's perfectly sculpted 8-pack, it still was not enough to change how much she found him annoying. As for her father, Moon Yuhuan, he did not care about any of that in the slightest. After all, Wai Yun-ho's astonishing Go skill had already won him over completely. Seeing that Wai Yun-ho spent every day doing nothing but eating and sleeping, with not a shred of proper work in sight, Munmunji finally decided it was time to teach him a lesson. Her father might be willing to indulge him, but that did not mean she was about to let Wai Yun-ho freeload off them forever. He had to do something to earn his keep. So next, Munmunji dragged Wai Yun-ho over to a pile of filthy cloth and laundry. Then she very matter-of-factly told him to wash all of it clean. Just imagining him spending the whole day buried in dirty laundry was enough to make Munmunji secretly laugh to herself. But when she came back 2 hours later to inspect his progress, she was completely stunned. Every single piece of clothing had already been washed spotless and was now fluttering in the sun. And the most infuriating part was that Wai Yun-ho had apparently already found somewhere else to lie down again. Munmunji grew more and more irritated the longer she thought about it. So right after that, she took Wai Yun-ho to a lumber yard and ordered him to split every last piece of wood there. Thinking she had finally come up with a perfect plan, Munmunji was practically overjoyed, because even a strong grown man would need days to finish chopping all that wood. But before long, Wai Yun-ho had somehow already split everything and gone right back to lying down again. Faced with something that absurd, Munmunji obviously refused to give up, so next she ordered Wai Yun-ho to wash the dishes. Then she made him sweep the floors too. But when she saw him finishing every single task beyond expectation, Munmunji was left with nothing but helpless frustration. Still, compared to all the housework Munmunji gave him, what really gave Wai Yun-ho a headache were the endless Go challenges that kept coming one after another. Ever since he defeated Moon Yuhuan, Go masters from all over the country had begun showing up just to challenge him. Unfortunately for them, not a single one of those so-called masters could actually beat him. And after crushing one challenger after another, even when Wai Yun-ho deliberately left an opening and tried to hand someone a win, those overly suspicious opponents would still decide it was only a trap he had laid on purpose. They would even seriously convince themselves that some terrifying killing move had to be hidden behind that opening. Then, putting on a smug and profound look, they would say something like, "Good thing I saw through it." Even when the opponent was clearly showing an opening, the fact that they still could not win only made them more furious. In the end, they would always concede defeat and solemnly declare that they would come challenge him again next time. At that point, Wai Yun-ho practically had tears in his eyes. Those people were absurdly persistent, and the never-ending stream of challenges left his back sore and his waist aching, making them even more exhausting than doing housework. Then, just as Wai Yun-ho was slipping back toward his room, he suddenly heard Munmunji speaking with a man somewhere nearby. Driven by curiosity, Wai Yun-ho sneaked over to eavesdrop, and at that very moment, he saw a strangely dressed man proposing marriage to Munmunji. Of course, after seeing Wai Yun-ho's 8-pack, a man like this clearly was never going to catch Munmunji's eye. But after Munmunji rejected him, the man immediately started making threats. In a cold voice, he declared that there had never been anything he wanted and failed to get. If she still refused this time, the next time he would resort to his own methods, and if she continued to reject him, he would even bring the entire Hanram Academy crashing down. Munmunji instantly flew into a rage and snapped back coldly. "Do you really think Hanram Academy can be brought down that easily? What a self-righteous fool." But the man still wore an arrogant look, his tone laced with threat, as he told her she had better know exactly what kind of situation she was in. Munmunji clearly had no intention of continuing this conversation with someone like him, so she turned to leave on the spot. But in the very next second, the man suddenly grabbed her by the wrist. Then, with a sharp pull, he yanked her straight back toward him. His disgusting face moved in close right in front of hers. With a sneer, he said, "If I take you away right now, would you still dare act that arrogant?" Munmunji was obviously shaken by the sudden move, and for a moment, had no idea what to do. But right then, a cold voice suddenly sounded from behind her. "Are you always this rude in someone else's house?" As the words fell, Wai Yun-ho stood there with a hard expression, staring at the man as if he wanted to pierce straight through him. Only then did the man finally let go of Munmunji's wrist, and Munmunji, looking wronged and shaken, immediately ran toward Wai Yun-ho. Wai Yun-ho lowered his gaze to the wrist that had already turned faintly blue from the man's grip, and a nameless anger instantly rose in his chest. Then, seeing the pitiful look in her eyes, he gently took the red ribbon from her hair. After that, he used that ribbon to tie back his own long hair, and the look in his eyes turned razor sharp. "You really are a rude bastard." But the man was clearly used to scenes like this, and only sneered in disdain. "Manners? Does hiding nearby and eavesdropping on other people count as manners to you?" Under the man's stare, Wai Yun-ho slowly stepped forward, one step at a time. "Sorry, I've never really cared much about etiquette. But just as the tension between them reached the point of breaking, a rapid burst of footsteps suddenly came from outside the door. It turned out to be those scholars who kept coming every day to challenge Hwa Yun-ho at Go. The moment he saw them, his head started aching. He had already hidden here, yet somehow those people still refused to leave him alone. With so many eyes watching, the man could only flick his sleeve and turn away for the time being. But before leaving, he still threw down a final threat. Remember this. If you still refuse my demand within 3 days, then I'll handle things my own way. Watching him leave, Hwa Yun-ho could not help feeling puzzled. Just who exactly was that man? As it turned out, he was the adopted son of Nok Gil, the chief eunuch of the Eastern Bureau, and his name was Nok Mu-rip. This man had been pestering Mun Mun-ji for a long time, proposing marriage to her over and over again despite already being rejected many times. But lately, the frequency of his appearances had become much higher, and his patience was clearly wearing thinner and thinner. And the real reason behind all of this was, in large part, Moon Yu-hwan. Moon Mun-ji's father was a man of extraordinary talent, someone with the makings of a grand chancellor. As for why Moon Yu-hwan had chosen to withdraw and live in seclusion here, it was not without reason. At the heart of it all was the fact that eunuchs had thrown the court into chaos, leaving people of real ambition and principle with no chance to be properly employed. On top of that, Moon Yu-hwan carried tremendous prestige within Hanrim Institute itself. If he ever returned to court as an official, he would be able to rally supporters with a single call. And that was exactly why the Eastern Bureau had always worked so hard to suppress him. But now, it seemed they had found a new way forward. Have their adopted son, Nok Mu-rip, marry Mun Mun-ji. That way, they could bind the Mun family to their side without directly provoking a clash with the scholars. After hearing all of that, Hwa Yun-ho could not help letting out a quiet sigh. The schemes these people played with really were far more complicated than he liked. Meanwhile, Nok Mu-rip was kneeling on the ground with his head lowered, not daring to move. Cold sweat covered his face, because standing before him was none other than his adoptive father, the Grand Eunuch Nok Gil. Still kneeling, Nok Mu-rip did not even dare raise his head. He could only force himself to explain that the reason today's job had failed was entirely because that Go champion had interfered. More importantly, too many scholars had shown up afterward. There had been too many eyes around, making it impossible to act. Nok Gil turned slightly, his tone cold as ice. Do you think this matter was merely your personal affair? This mission was handed down by that Lord himself to us. So whether it's for your sake or mine, failure is absolutely not an option this time. More than death itself, I fear disappointing that Lord. You should understand the weight of those words. So no matter what methods are required, you can go all out. If anyone dares to get in your way, just eliminate them. On the other side, during the day, Lee Hwan-oh had already expressed his wish to meet Hwa Yun-ho and play a game with him. But treating everyone the same, Hwa Yun-ho had merely lazily told him to get in line and wait his turn. The moment she heard that, Mun Mun-ji erupted in anger, and Hwa Yun-ho, knowing there was no escape, could only obediently go along with it, even though he was unwilling in every possible way. Mun Mun-ji was standing right behind him, watching. But you can't force a good match. No matter how fierce Hwa Yun-ho's playing style was, Lee Hwan-oh had already formed a prejudice against him, thinking that even if this lazy-looking young man played well, so what? After the game ended, when Moon Yu-hwan spoke highly of Hwa Yun-ho, Lee Hwan-ae only replied coldly, "Perhaps you misjudged him, Master Mun. I have absolutely no intention of employing someone like him, because as far as I'm concerned, this is nothing but a pure waste of time. A dark, windy night is the perfect time for murder." And at that very moment, Nok Mu-rip had already arrived with a crowd of assassins. A smug smile hung at the corner of his mouth. Clearly, he intended to subdue everyone here first before making his move. At his command, the assassins immediately infiltrated Hanrim Academy, and the servant at the entrance, still sweeping the grounds late into the night, became the first soul to die under their blades. The slaughter continued, and before long, Hanrim Academy was awash in blood. And yet, at that very moment, Hwa Yun-ho was still deep in pleasant dreams, completely unaware of everything happening outside. Nok Mu-rip's face was dark. He had waited far too long for this day. Now that his adoptive father was backing him, he could finally act tonight without the slightest restraint. Moon Yu-hwan naturally could not understand why Nok Mu-rip was acting this way, but Nok Mu-rip had clearly come prepared with an excuse. He claimed they had received intelligence that Hanrim Grand Academy had become highly suspicious lately, with all sorts of influential figures coming and going in recent days. He even accused them of gathering in secret to collude with enemies and betray the state. Faced with such fabricated charges, Moon Yu-hwan was instantly furious. "We were doing nothing more than playing Go!" Nok Mu-rip wore a sly, sinister look, clearly refusing to believe that so many powerful people had gathered here just to play a game of Go. He even directly demanded that they hand over that so-called Go champion at once. But just then, one of the assassins came to report that they had already searched the entire Hanrim Academy from top to bottom, and still found no trace of the Go champion. Only then did ManhwaCapped turn back to the crowd and put on a false show of fairness, saying they would now conduct a proper search for evidence inside the academy, and if no problems were found, everyone here would be released and even compensated. But the moment he finished speaking, another assassin stepped forward and claimed that evidence had already been found. Faced with this so-called evidence, Manhwa immediately said he had never seen it before. But if you want to hang a man, you can always find a rope, and ManhwaCapped had clearly come prepared. At that very moment, a figure in the crowd slowly rose to his feet. ManhwaCapped, are you really sure you want to take things this far? The man who stood up was none other than Li Huane, the emperor's own brother and the head of the inspectorate. Li Huane was furious and barked at him on the spot. Do you not recognize me? Release them all at once. ManhwaCapped kept a calm expression and even made a show of politeness. So it is Lord Li Huane. Had I known you were here, naturally we would not have acted so rashly. But in the very next second, he abruptly changed his tone. If that is the case, then I have one question. Why are you conspiring with these people to betray the state? ManhwaCapped's expression grew even more frenzied as he bit back with a completely shameless accusation, claiming that Li Huane himself was the true mastermind of this treason and was even plotting to seize the throne. Hearing such upside-down slander, Li Huane instantly exploded in rage. You despicable bastard! Do you really think none of this will ever be exposed? ManhwaCapped's face darkened as he replied coldly. That is no longer something you need to worry about, because after tonight, everyone here will be dead, except for one person who might be spared. As he said that, ManhwaCapped slowly turned his eyes toward Manhwa. He sneered and said, If you had not rejected me from the start, none of this would have happened today. ManhwaCapped slowly lowered his fat head. He even pretended gently that he would not kill her. But what came next was even more chilling, because he said he would make her wish she were dead. In the next second, he suddenly grabbed Manhwa by the hair and said coldly, Then let's begin right now. That disgusting creep wore a revolting smile as he reached out with an equally revolting hand and slowly stroked Manhwa's face. Manhwa fell into total despair. Was she really about to be defiled by this man today? But just then, she suddenly noticed a sneaky figure moving furtively in the distance. Manhwa instantly flared up and shouted the name on the spot. Wei Yanho! She demanded in both anger and disbelief. What on earth are you doing? Are you actually trying to run away? Caught on the spot, Wei Yanho looked immediately awkward. He hurriedly explained that of course, he was not running away. He was merely executing the highest level of tactical maneuvering, running for his life. After all, there are simply too many enemies. And with my mediocre skills, I probably wouldn't even be enough for them to cut down. Hearing that, Manhwa and the others were all furious, only feeling more certain that this guy really was a hopeless bastard. But right then, ManhwaCapped suddenly gave a cold order. Someone kill him. In the next instant, one of the assassins exploded upward from where he stood. In little more than a blink, the blade in his hand had already slashed its way right in front of Wei Yanho. But at that very moment, disbelief suddenly flashed across the assassin's eyes, because the strike he had believed could not possibly miss had cut through empty air. In the next second, Wei Yanho descended from above and smashed a brutal elbow straight into the assassin's body, and the assassin who had looked so fierce just moments earlier collapsed to the ground in a twisted posture that was almost impossible to describe, never getting up again. Beneath the moonlight, the young man stood suspended in the air, radiating an indescribable, breathtaking grace. Manhwa's eyes shimmered as shock surged through her heart, and somewhere deep inside, a feeling she could neither explain nor name quietly began to take root. That sight stunned everyone present, though none of them knew that Wei Yanho was in fact the final disciple personally taught by the Sword Saint from 300 years ago. Even ManhwaCapped, the leader of the assassins, could not help breaking into a faint cold sweat at the scene. So this man was not just some Go champion after all. He was actually a martial arts expert too. In the next second, ManhwaCapped turned his darkened gaze toward one of his subordinates. He asked coldly, How much longer are you going to tolerate this ridiculous humiliation? It turned out that this man was the most outstanding killer among all the assassins ManhwaCapped had personally trained. ManhwaCapped regained some of his confidence and gave the order coldly, leave him alive, because he wanted to interrogate this man personally. But the assassin in whom ManhwaCapped had placed such confidence regretted it in the very next second, because that attack of his, which looked ferociously sharp and unstoppable, was met by Wei Yanho casually picking up a broom and swatting him away like a fly. The assassin clutched his struck head tightly, instantly feeling as though all his dignity had been smashed to pieces. In the next moment, he yanked a short poisoned blade from inside his robes. But before he could even launch his next attack, Wei Yanho had already flashed straight in front of him. And once again, it was still the same broom, only this time, the assassin never managed to stand back up. That scene left everyone present completely dumbfounded. And Wei Yanho even casually added, Looks like a broom really is the best tool for taking out the trash. After finishing off that man, Wee Yun-ho lightly rubbed his arm. Then he lifted his eyes toward Nok-mu-rip. Next, it should be your turn. Nok-mu-rip might have been shaken inside, but in the next second, a terrifying aura suddenly erupted from his body. He slowly raised one hand toward the night sky. The violent force around him instantly began surging outward in wild waves. As the energy gathered, it actually condensed into a giant shadowy form that flickered between existence and illusion. Nok-mu-rip's gaze turned vicious as he spoke in a chilling tone. Killing you will be effortless. Dying by my hand is an honor you should be grateful for. The crushing pressure spreading through the air instantly made Li Huana and the others struggle even to breathe. None of them had expected Nok-mu-rip's strength to be this monstrous. In the very next second, Nok-mu-rip struck. The overwhelming force around him actually transformed into a series of tangible giant hands. In less than a heartbeat, all of those hands had already closed in on Wee Yun-ho. But at that exact moment, Wee Yun-ho's figure flickered, and every one of his opponent's attacks missed in an instant. Nok-mu-rip, who had still been arrogantly in control a moment ago, suddenly felt a freezing chill rise behind his back. Before he could even react, he was blasted through the air and slammed brutally into the wall. That sight once again left everyone in total shock. After that, Wee Yun-ho casually untied everyone's restraints, while Li Huano, still worried, could not help asking, "Did that blow kill Nok-mu-rip?" Wee Yun-ho answered casually, "That guy's got a thick skin. He won't die that easily." Sure enough, Nok-mu-rip slowly crawled back out from the rubble. Wee Yun-ho rolled his arm once and said flatly, "All right then. Let's continue our fight." But what Nok-mu-rip said next left everyone present stunned. He actually said, "Wait, why can't we just pretend none of this ever happened?" After committing all kinds of evil, this shameless bastard still wanted to walk away scot-free. Li Huana immediately stepped forward and stared coldly at him. Wishful thinking. Do you really think I would let someone like you walk away? Only then did Nok-mu-rip slowly force himself back to his feet, his expression turning unusually grave. He said in a low, heavy voice, "If I do not return, my adoptive father will inevitably conclude that the plan has failed. And once it comes to that, he will gamble everything in one final desperate move. No matter the outcome, the imperial family will suffer irreversible damage." Li Huana's expression turned solemn as he said coldly, "Even if we let Nok-mu-rip go this time, would that really spare the imperial family from disaster? With the kind of man his adoptive father is, making a move is only a matter of sooner or later." But Nok-mu-rip acted as if it were nothing at all. "You're right," he admitted. "But if you let me leave this time, you can at least buy yourselves a brief period of peace." Li Huan stared at Nok-mu-rip without blinking, and no one could tell what was going through his mind. But to everyone's surprise, he actually chose to let Nok-mu-rip go. And as Nok-mu-rip was leaving, Wee Yun-ho suddenly spoke from behind him. "Your flowing maple returning snow art is indeed impressive. Still, in the state you're maintaining now, its power is clearly compromised." Wee Yun-ho even added, "I hope the next time we meet, you remove that transformation technique and fight me properly." But Nok-mu-rip did not turn around and gave no answer. He merely left in silence with his men. Once the battle was over, Wee Yun-ho casually bid farewell to everyone and announced that he was going back to sleep. Moon-mun-ji had only just escaped danger, yet she already looked like she was slipping right back into her roaring lioness mode. The moment Wee Yun-ho saw that expression, he all but fled on instinct. After all, that fight had exhausted him, and all he wanted now was to crawl back and take another nap. To Wee Yun-ho, keeping a full and proper sleep schedule was one of life's greatest priorities. As far as he was concerned, aside from Mun-mun-ji, no one left in this world could truly disrupt his state of mind. But before long, Mun-mun-ji's cold face appeared once more at his bedside, shouting, "Stop pretending! I know perfectly well you're not actually asleep. On top of that, my father already called for you. You've been lying in bed for a full 7 days, and you still want to make excuses not to go." In the very next second, Mun-mun-ji simply yanked his blanket right off him. Wee Yun-ho had no choice. If he did not go with her, he would never get any peaceful sleep at all. By the time he arrived in the main hall, Li Huana and Mun Yuhuan were already waiting there, and Mun Yuhuan looked quite satisfied that Mun-mun-ji had actually succeeded in dragging Wee Yun-ho over. Mun Yuhuan even casually praised her. "You did well. If there's nothing else, you may leave first." But Wee Yun-ho completely misunderstood the meaning and immediately responded in all seriousness, "Since there's nothing else, I'll just head back to sleep then." That scene made Li Huana explode on the spot, and he barked in anger. "You damn brat! Do you really think we called you here just to look at your face?" Mun-mun-ji instantly joined in from the side, turning around and roaring at Wee Yun-ho like a lion. But for Wee Yun-ho, these kinds of social occasions had always been one of the things he was worst at, and all he felt was a massive headache coming on. At that moment, Li Huana suddenly pulled a short sword from his robes. Then he gently set it down on the table. Wee Yun-ho's eyes lit up at once, and he instinctively assumed it was a gift for him. So he promptly snatched it up and stuffed it into his chest. The moment Li Huana saw that, the veins on his forehead almost burst. Are you not even going to ask what this short sword is before pocketing it? But Wei Yunho's answer was simple and direct. Because it looks extremely well made, so it's probably worth a decent amount of money. And after saying that, he even clutched it protectively to his chest and cautiously asked, "Since you already gave it to me, surely you aren't planning to take it back now, right?" In the next second, Li Huana exploded outright, shouting, "You little shit! This sword is the symbol of the Inspectorate's authority. Possessing it means holding a status nearly equal to mine." After hearing that, however, Wei Yunho only looked mildly disappointed. "So that's it? Doesn't it have any more practical use? Like getting me a house or exchanging it for something actually valuable?" If Li Huana had given him this sword because he had saved him that day, then in Wei Yunho's eyes, the reward still felt far from truly practical. After all, what some people really needed were things that were more material, more immediate, more useful in the real world. Though Wei Yunho himself was not entirely sure how to put that in a gentler way. Hearing this, Li Huana clenched both fists so hard he was trembling. "Are you seriously implying that this sword representing my authority is not even as useful as simply handing you money?" But Wei Yunho only smiled faintly and earnestly replied, "Actually, you really don't need to put it quite so bluntly. I do understand basic manners after all." That was the final straw. In the next instant, Li Huana grabbed the inkstone from the table and hurled it straight at Wei Yunho, and while doing so, he shouted at him to get out. Even so, Li Huana still forced himself to calm down enough to explain once more. "This sword represents the authority and life of the Inspectorate. In other words, carrying it effectively grants you a rank and status almost equal to mine." But after hearing all that, Wei Yunho only looked even more displeased. "So what you're really saying is that you're just trying to dump extra work on me for no reason?" At that moment, Moon Yuhuan suddenly cut in. "Since ancient times, the Inspectorate has always planted covert agents throughout the Central Plains, and now that position has been vacant for a very long time. I hope you will accept it." Wei Yunho might not have much fondness for Li Huana, but Mun Yuhuan had shown him genuine appreciation, so his words were at least worth hearing out. But right after that, Li Huana pressed on, his tone still edged with aggression. "What family do you come from, and who exactly is your master?" Wei Yunho, however, gave no answer at all, which only made Li Huana more displeased. "Is it because you don't trust me that you refuse to answer?" Li Huana was clearly used to speaking in this blunt and forceful way. In his eyes, Wei Yunho obviously knew his status, yet still chose not to trust him, and even intended to hide his background. But Wei Yunho merely replied in a calm tone, "Sorry, that has absolutely nothing to do with your rank or status. The real issue is that I have no way of trusting someone who hides his true strength, yet still stands in front of everyone putting on a performance. And there's one thing I'm genuinely curious about. If you had really made a move that day, how long would it have taken you to subdue Nakmu Rip? 5 seconds? 3? Or had you already been treating everyone as pieces on a board while you alone stood outside it, controlling the entire game? If you can't answer that, then forgive me, but I'll have to pass on that position." Wei Yunho's sharp judgment left Li Huano deeply shocked. He had never expected someone who looked so lazy to be this perceptive. So Nakmu Rip, who had seemed so powerful, was really just a mere sacrificial pawn in someone else's eyes. If Li Huana had made a move that day and killed Nakmu Rip, it would have exposed the fact that he had been hiding his martial arts. If that happened, Nakgil could use it as an excuse to accuse him of hiding his skills and gathering scholars to plot treason, and Wei Yunho's appearance that day had perfectly solved that problem for him. Li Huana lowered his head and apologized to Wei Yunho. "I'm sorry. Offending you was not my intention. We were simply out of options that day." Even so, he still hoped Wei Yunho would accept the position of Royal Covert Agent. Hearing that gave Wei Yunho a headache. It was obviously going to be a troublesome job. If Li Huana insisted on forcing him to take it, then he could only choose to leave right now. Sometimes, trying to communicate with older people really was not a pleasant experience. After Wei Yunho left, Mun Yuhuan asked Li Huano what he thought of him. Li Huana's expression turned serious. "I knew his martial arts would be strong, but I didn't expect his realm to be this high. He saw through me at a single glance. He looks lazy, but his intellect is downright terrifying. If I drop my guard, even I might suffer a backlash." He clearly understood the whole situation, yet only acted at the very last moment. Who raised a monster like this? Even if we cannot find his master, we must find out which family he belongs to. Under the moonlight, Wei Yunho lay resting along the edge of the roof. At that moment, a voice rose from below. Moon Yuhuan stood there with his hands behind his back and asked with a smile, "Are you preparing to leave?" Wei Yunho felt a little embarrassed. After eating and staying here for free for so long, he hurriedly explained, "I never planned to just slip away without saying goodbye. I really have learned a lot here, but I still plan to leave after some time. Moon Yuhuan smiled and asked, "Then what exactly have you learned here?" Wei Yanho thought for a moment and answered slowly, "Mainly two things. First, the more books a person reads, the heavier the burden they might end up carrying. Second, a place like the Imperial Court is far more frightening than I had imagined, especially people like Li Huana. Since stepping into the martial world, Li Huana is the strongest person I have ever seen in terms of raw force. My master sent me here so I could see the world, but what I ended up seeing most was the ugliness of that world." After hearing that, Mun Yuhuan seemed a little reflective as well. Everyone has their own ideals and ambitions, but when reality clashes with those ideals, people realize that if they want to fulfill them, they first have to overcome reality itself. Yet reality involves far too many factors, and even if someone invests a great deal of time, success is not guaranteed. So many people gradually lose patience and begin looking for shortcuts. And that is when the kind of scheming and deceit you hate most begins to appear, like hiding one's true strength, or sending one's adopted son to die. Those words stirred Wei Yanho. "I just feel that this world moves too fast. A lazy person like me can hardly keep up enough to observe it, feel it, or understand it." But Mun Yuhuan did not quite agree. A diligent person might learn things faster, but a lazy person might actually see the essence of things more clearly. And someone who can look at this world honestly will naturally come to understand the road he must walk in the future. Mun Yuhuan's words were incisive and profoundly grounded. At that moment, Wei Yanho seemed to gain a faint new understanding. In the very next instant, he sat down right where he was and steadied his breathing. Some of the bottlenecks that had long held back his martial arts now seemed to loosen just a little. Mun Yuhuan remained below, quietly watching everything unfold. But in the next moment, he took a single step and appeared directly on the roof. Wei Yanho seemed to sense it too. He slowly withdrew from that half-enlightened state and opened his eyes. Mun Yuhuan turned his head slightly and asked calmly, "Do you feel like you have finally understood something?" Wei Yanho looked a little awkward and answered honestly, "To tell you the truth, I'm not entirely sure myself." Mun Yuhuan burst into laughter. "That's exactly right. Some things can only be understood slowly, by feeling them out with your heart. I hope that one day you will find the answer yourself." Wei Yanho had not even had time to respond when, in the blink of an eye, Mun Yuhuan was already back where he had been standing before, and then turned to leave. That left Wei Yanho standing there alone in a daze. He could not help thinking to himself that this old father-in-law-like figure was truly unfathomable. But that conversation today had, in turn, caused the inner core his master left inside him to resonate in a strange way. Under the moonlight, Wei Yanho lifted his gaze toward the night sky. For a fleeting moment, the Sword Emperor's figure seemed to appear before his eyes again, as if grumbling with a laugh. "Brat, are you finally about to grasp the Tao?" By the next day, faced with someone as lazy and chronically stalling as Wei Yanho, even Mun Yuhuan seemed to be running out of ways to deal with him. Wei Yanho awkwardly explained, "I happened to wake up late again today, but tomorrow I will definitely leave." But right then, Munmunji arrived with men from the Dragon Tamer escort agency and pointed straight at Wei Yanho. "That's the guy. Take him away." One of the escorts looked troubled and said that their agency transported goods, not people, but Munmunji remained perfectly calm, as if she had already prepared this argument. "He's basically no different from cargo. Just toss him in the wagon. As long as you feed him 3 meals a day, he won't complain and won't cause trouble. We'll pay double the fare." When the escort still hesitated, Munmunji calmly raised the offer again. "If triple isn't enough, then make it quadruple." In the very next moment, the deal was somehow happily struck. Watching them bargain over his price so brazenly right in front of him, Wei Yanho instantly exploded. He shouted in anger, "You woman! Do you really plan to pack me up and send me off like luggage? Has human decency fallen this far? I just saved you from danger, and now you're turning around and reselling me like cargo?" Even Mun Yuhuan, after hearing that, could not help chiming in. "Munji, doing things this way really is a bit much. At the very least, we ought to let him move freely." But Munmunji had clearly already seen straight through Wei Yanho's stubbornness. "If we give him freedom to act," she said, "then he might still be lying around here by next year. No matter how you look at it, I'm actually helping him." That made Wei Yanho jump up in fury. "Helping? Shipping me off like a crate is what you call help?" But Munmunji already had her own reasoning ready. "Weren't you planning to go to the Divine Beast Pavilion anyway? The escort route happens to pass by there. If you went by yourself, it would only be tiring and troublesome. This way, you won't have to walk. The escort agency earns money, and we get rid of you too. Isn't that a perfect win for everyone?" Hearing all that, Wei Yanho's expression actually turned serious. The worst part was that what this woman said sounded annoyingly reasonable, and for once, he had no comeback. How unpredictable life was. Just a moment ago, he had still been lying comfortably in bed, and now somehow he was already being shipped away. Before he left, Munmunji and her father both came to see him off. Looking at Munmunji's smiling face, Wee Yun-ho suddenly felt a strange bitterness in his chest. As the wagon wheels began to turn, he once again set out on a journey toward a distant land. Through the wind and woods, the caravan slowly rolled onward. Wee Yun-ho could not help glancing back one last time. There stood Munmunji, waving at him and calling out loudly, "Take care on the road!" Wee Yun-ho made a face at her. She just chased me out, and now she's suddenly telling me to take care on the road. But just as father and daughter turned to head back inside, Munmunji still could not help glancing back. A soft smile rose at the corner of her lips as she said quietly, "You really should fix that lazy habit of yours." Maple leaves drifted down on the autumn wind. The girl stood there in silence, and in that faintly wistful glance back, her heart had already drifted far away, chasing after the boy who had just left. The somewhat scruffy-looking man was named Gu Bai-hang, and he was the escort leader for this transport. Gu Bai-hang found himself a little curious about Wei Yun-ho, who spent every day sprawled on the wagon sleeping. Had this guy really stayed like that ever since he got on the cart? The thought left Gu Bai-hang genuinely amazed. In a way, being able to maintain that state so consistently was almost admirable. One of the guards explained that Hanrim had already warned them. As long as Wei Yun-ho got 3 meals a day, he would not cause any trouble before they reached their destination. Gu Bai-hang was still puzzled, so he decided to wake the sleeping Wei Yun-ho. "I'm Gu Bai-hang, the escort leader for this job. Our agency usually only transports cargo. Even though Lady Mun paid double the fare, do you really plan on just sleeping through this entire journey?" Wei Yun-ho looked up at him. "No need to worry about that. I was registered as cargo anyway, so you can just treat me like another piece of luggage." Gu Bai-hang glanced sideways at him. What an absurdly optimistic guy. Since that was the case, he decided to just drop the matter. After traveling for a long stretch, Wei Yun-ho felt a little tired. People only knew that he was lazy and loved to sleep. But the truth was that the moment he fell asleep, that damned old man would invade his dreams and start putting him through insane training. There was no telling how long this cursed nightmare technique would last. Am I really going to keep suffering under that old man for the rest of my life? Right then, Gu Bai-hang suddenly stopped the wagon. He thought he had heard movement from the bushes ahead. A flicker of unease rose in him, and he shouted, "Who's hiding there?" "I'm Gu Bai-hang of the Dragon Tamer Escort Agency." But the bushes gave no response at all, and years of experience immediately told Gu Bai-hang that something was off. If someone had already been discovered and still refused to show himself, then either he was an ignorant amateur bandit or he was someone genuinely dangerous who had set his sights on them. While slowly drawing the saber at his waist, he called out again, "I'm Gu Bai-hang of the Dragon Tamer Escort Agency. To the one hiding in the bushes, please show yourself at once." At last, a rustling sound came from the brush. Then a swordsman dressed in red stepped out. The sight of that swordsman made Gu Bai-hang tense up immediately. But in the next instant, the man introduced himself first. "Pardon the disturbance. I'm Peng Du-gi of the Peng family." Gu Bai-hang quickly returned the courtesy. "I am Gu Bai-hang of the Dragon Tamer Escort Agency. May I ask why young hero Peng is here?" Peng Du-gi seemed to have suffered some internal injuries and said urgently, "I'm being hunted by enemies, and I can't shake them off. Please, escort leader Gu, I need your help." Gu Bai-hang might have looked a little scruffy, but he still had a bit of chivalry in him. He answered right away, "The Peng family has always been famous for its sense of justice. Since you've asked, I will naturally do everything I can to help." But right then, Wei Yun-ho cast him a cold glance. "Helping him is fine, but I'm afraid you might not be able to handle the consequences." Gu Bai-hang ignored him completely and directly hid Peng Du-gi inside the large barrel at the back of the wagon. He even specifically warned him not to make a single sound no matter what happened. Faced with such a meddlesome fool, Wei Yun-ho really had nothing to say. From inside the barrel, Peng Du-gi said in a low voice, "As long as you help me escape this disaster, I guarantee every one of you will receive a generous reward afterward." Wei Yun-ho only let out a dry laugh. What good is a reward if we all end up dead first? For the sake of one man's safety, dragging so many others into danger was, in his eyes, simply ridiculous. And yet, for the next few days, the journey remained surprisingly peaceful, and before long, they were almost at their destination. Gu Bai-hang, who had been tense the entire way, finally let out a breath of relief. It seemed their luck was good this time, and the pursuers hadn't caught up to them. But at that exact moment, a man dressed in green suddenly stepped out and blocked the path of the wagon. Immediately after that, more than 10 other men in green sprang out from the nearby woods. The man at the front held a steel blade in hand and wore a cold expression. One look was enough to tell he had not come with good intentions. Gu Bai-hang instantly broke out in a cold sweat. They were men from the Naknem Brotherhood. He quickly got off the wagon and bowed. "I am Gu Bai-hang of the Dragon Tamer Escort Agency. It is an honor to meet you all." But the leader showed him no courtesy at all and only asked coldly, "Have you seen a young man dressed in red? You'd better answer honestly, or my blade won't show any mercy." Gu Bai-hang grew visibly tense and hurried to say, Our escort agency has always maintained a good relationship with the Naknim Brotherhood. We would absolutely never hide the man you're looking for. But that very panic in his explanation exposed something suspicious. I only asked if you had seen him. Why are you in such a rush to explain that you aren't hiding him? In the next second, the leader pressed his blade against Gubai Heng's throat. Are you playing games with me, you incoherent fool? At that moment, Gubai Heng's heart nearly stopped. Had they already discovered that Peng Dugi was hiding inside the barrel? But it was clear they were not actually certain yet, which was why they were preparing to test them another way. In the next instant, the man in green turned his gaze toward another escort worker. Have you seen the man in red? If you don't know, then you have no value at all. Watching that escort tremble like a leaf, the man in green instantly flew into a rage. Since you can't give me an answer, then death will be your answer. Seeing that one of his men was about to die, Gubai Heng could only grit his teeth and rush forward, slamming into the green-clothed man with all his strength. But right then, Wei Yun-ho suddenly spoke. He calmly said, I've seen the guy in red. Then Wei Yun-ho even lifted his foot and lightly kicked the large barrel beside him. He added flatly, the guy you're looking for is right in here. With his hiding place fully exposed, Peng Dugi could only climb out of the barrel with a helpless look on his face. Seeing him really appear, the man in green actually looked a little surprised. Instead of running, you hid inside a barrel? How laughably stupid. Peng Dugi's face clearly tightened with embarrassment, and he could only grit his teeth and say, since you've already found me, then come at me. But this matter has nothing to do with them. After that, Peng Dugi turned back and bowed to Gubai Heng. Thank you for your help, escort leader Gu. Their target is me, so all of you should leave now. Seeing that things had already gone far beyond anything he could control, Gubai Heng quickly moved to drive the wagon away. But right then, Wei Yun-ho called out to stop him. Captain Gu, why are you so slow to catch on? In theory, the Naknim Brotherhood could never allow word of them hunting a Peng family member to get out, because once that spreads, the Peng family would definitely retaliate. So to make sure nothing leaks, they will most likely kill every single one of us. The green-clothed leader actually looked a little surprised when he heard that. He even said in complete seriousness, that is a very good point. I honestly hadn't even thought of that myself. Gubai Heng instantly exploded in anger. You really are a bastard. They hadn't even thought of that until you opened your mouth. Just then, Peng Dugi stepped in front of them. Go, all of you. I'll hold them off. But Wei Yun-ho clearly disdained that kind of act. This whole mess started because of you. Yet now you're putting on a show like you're going to solve it for us. How much time can a man who only knows how to run really buy us? At your level, we'd probably get caught again before we even got very far. In Wei Yun-ho's view, rather than trying to run, they might as well join forces now. At least that way, their chances would be a little better. At that moment, the Naknim Brotherhood leader coldly gave the order. Since you're all courting death, don't blame me. In the next instant, the Naknim Brotherhood men all launched their attack on Peng Dugi and the others. The green-clothed leader's blade work was fierce. In only a moment, his saber had already cut its way right in front of Peng Dugi. Peng Dugi hurried to block with his own blade, but it was obvious he was struggling badly. Then, under the combined assault of several other Naknim men, it did not take long before he was already in grave danger. Right then, one of the men swung his blade again. Peng Dugi had nowhere to dodge and could only shut his eyes and wait for death. But at that exact moment, a dark shadow suddenly flew through the air. It slammed straight into the body of the green-clothed attacker. The massive impact knocked the man flat to the ground, unable to rise again. That scene left Peng Dugi utterly stunned. He quickly turned to look back. Only then did he realize that the terrifying lethal projectile had actually just been a bowl casually thrown from Wei Yun-ho's hand. But before he had time to stay shocked, another attack came at him in the next moment. Even though the enemy side was down one fighter, Peng Dugi was still struggling badly. And compared to him, Gubai Heng was in even worse shape. He was nearly done for while dealing with just a single opponent. In the next second, Wei Yun-ho threw another bolt and blasted Gubai Heng's opponent away as well. And at that very moment, pushed to the absolute brink, Peng Dugi finally unleashed his family's signature art, the Five Ancestors' gate-shattering saber. His aura surged wildly, and the faint image of a massive white tiger appeared behind him. Then, with a furious roar, his saber intent actually condensed into a tangible blade light. The men of the Naknim Brotherhood all clearly felt the terrifying saber intent contained in that strike. The move was incredibly powerful, but those green-clothed men still barely managed to dodge it. That sight left Peng Dugi a little disappointed. They had actually managed to dodge it, but while he was still frozen for that brief moment, three men in green attacked him again at the same time, and after using such a powerful move just now, he no longer had the strength to keep holding on. Yet, in the next instant, those three men were all blasted away by three bowls at once. Looking at the stunned expression on Peng Dugi's face, Wei Yun-ho could not help cursing. You really are an idiot who only knows how to rigidly follow saber forms. And just then, Gu Baiheng had already reached the point where he could not hold on anymore and started desperately calling to Wai Yunho for help. Wai Yunho looked speechless. I'm clearly just cargo you guys are transporting, and now I have to turn around and protect you instead. But Gu Baiheng had already been beaten half to death and was barely hanging on like an old dog. At the critical moment, inspiration struck him, and he shouted, "If we all die here, do you really think you'll get to keep lying comfortably on that wagon? Once we reach the destination, I promise I'll treat you to the best food they have. So hurry up and help me." Seeing that Gu Baiheng really was about to collapse, Wai Yunho decided not to keep mocking him. Thinking back to the days when the Sword Emperor tormented him with stones in that cave, it was about time these people got a taste of what that had felt like. In the next second, Wai Yunho grabbed a handful of bowls and flung them out in rapid succession. In only a moment, the men of the Noknim Brotherhood were all struck by his bowls one after another. The enemies that Peng Doji and Gu Baiheng had found so hard to deal with were now all lying dead on the ground. Only the green-clothed leader remained standing there in a daze, his eyes full of disbelief. Wai Yunho looked coldly at Peng Doji. "You brought all this trouble here, but when it mattered most, you were completely useless. And that 5 Ancestors gate-shattering saber of yours may look fierce, but in reality, it's utter dog shit." In the next instant, Wai Yunho casually snatched the saber from Peng Doji's hand. "Watch carefully. That's not how a saber is used." Peng Doji immediately broke into a cold sweat. Before he could even react, Wai Yunho had already taken the saber from him. With a twist of his wrist, Wai Yunho casually slashed out a few times. "Watch closely. This is the saber art you were just using." The blade light fell, and it was unmistakably the very same saber technique Peng Doji had just used. Only its power was on a completely different level. Peng Doji was utterly shocked. Even the strongest expert in his sect could never have used that technique so easily. Wai Yunho continued demonstrating while speaking flatly. "Your saber style has too many openings. If you want to fix them, your return cuts need to be faster. Got it? It should be done like this. Why can't you understand something so simple?" Peng Doji was drenched in cold sweat. He kept apologizing out loud, yet deep down he also felt puzzled. Why am I instinctively apologizing to this guy in the first place? After finishing the demonstration, Wai Yunho tossed the saber back to Peng Doji. "Alright, now do it exactly the way I just showed you." Peng Doji picked up the saber and pointed it once more at the green-clothed leader. Then he shut his eyes tightly and tried to recall the moves Wai Yunho had just demonstrated. But when he opened his eyes and prepared to attack, that leader had already run with his tail tucked between his legs like a beaten dog, fleeing at full speed. Wai Yunho could not help feeling disappointed. "You're just too slow." That matter finally came to an end, and their journey at last reached its destination. Wai Yunho and Gu Baiheng said their farewells, and the matter with the Noknim Brotherhood would be handled by the Martial Alliance from here on. Meanwhile, back in the main hall of the Wai family estate, his parents were still grieving in silence over whether he was dead or alive. Then suddenly, a servant rushed into the Wai family hall with a letter in hand. After reading it, Wai Yunho's father was deeply shaken. After so many days and nights of waiting, they had finally learned that their son was still alive. Elsewhere, Wai Yunho unexpectedly crossed paths with Kim Yi-ren, the eldest daughter of Divine Hand Manor, and the very first time they met, she had already prepared a lavish meal for him. But what Wai Yunho had not expected was that this meal had only been possible because she had pawned her late mother's keepsake. A medical family with hundreds of years of heritage had actually fallen this far. And this place also happened to be the second destination the Sword Emperor had arranged for Wai Yunho's training journey. Kim Yi-ren's warmth actually left Wai Yunho a little unaccustomed. That damned feeling of being fooled just would not go away. So he decided to help her redeem her mother's keepsake. But when he made that request, the pawnshop owner, Dae Peng, claimed it would be difficult. Even though the item had originally only been pawned for 1 tael of silver, redeeming it now would cost 3 times that amount. Faced with such a shameless demand, Wai Yunho decided he had no choice but to take that item out. He said directly, "I have something valuable to show you. It ought to be worth quite a bit." The pawnshop owner took the short sword, and greed instantly appeared on his face. "The craftsmanship is excellent. I can offer 1 tael of gold to buy it outright." But in the very next second, something on the blade seemed to catch his eye, and he froze. The 2 characters engraved on the blade, Royal Censor, were impossible to miss. Wai Yunho looked at him coldly. "How much gold did you just say? I suggest you say it clearly this time." In the next instant, Dae Peng's legs gave out and he dropped to his knees, kowtowing frantically as he begged for mercy. "Censor, sir, this lowly one was blind. Everything I said just now was nonsense." Then he immediately put on a flattering smile and hurried to explain, "My lord, the interest rate might indeed have been a little high, but many people pawn things and never come back. We have to make up the loss through interest. As for the actual value of the item itself, we really would only earn 20%, because this keepsake was originally worth 10 taels of silver." Hearing that, Wai Yunho grew annoyed. "You really do know how to talk. Just a moment ago it was one tail, and now it's suddenly 10. I've never heard such nonsense in my entire life. Daepeng instantly broke into a heavy sweat, mouth hanging open, unable to explain himself at all. So that pawn shop was permanently shut down that very same day. When it came to dealing with people like this, Wei Yunho had his own methods. That night, Kim Yi-ran was still reading by lamplight, but just then, she suddenly heard a sound from outside the door. When she opened it, she found an object lying quietly on the ground under the moonlight. Looking down, she realized it was the pendant her mother had left behind, the very one she had pawned earlier that day. Kim Yi-ran gently picked up the pendant, and a trace of longing surfaced on her face. Up on the rooftop, the young man was lying there, asleep against the tiles. But Wei Yunho had no idea that, at this very moment, a new storm centered around him was already beginning to stir. It turned out that the group Wei Yunho had helped Peng Du-gi drive back last time was actually the 10 swordsmen under Nok Mu-rip. So even Zhao Hyun, the current leader of the Martial Alliance, took this matter extremely seriously. Even the 10 swordsmen, whom even the Peng family's genius, Peng Du-gi, could not handle, had been defeated with ease by that young man. And on top of that, the young man's older brother was Wei Sanho, the demon-slaying sword saint. At this rate, the Wei family was very likely to become the center of this entire storm. So he needed to know much more about that young man. And right now, the only person who had truly dealt with Wei Yunho directly was Peng Du-gi. So Zhao Hyun needed his help and believed he could handle this matter properly. Meanwhile, Wei Sanho also received a letter from their parents. For all these years, he had blamed himself endlessly over his younger brother's disappearance. So their mother wrote to him at the first possible moment, telling him that his brother was still alive, and hoping Wei Sanho could finally put down the burden he had carried all these years. And after learning that Wei Yunho had resurfaced but still had not returned home, their parents, desperate to see their son again, decided to put everything aside and go out to search for him in person. The first place they planned to visit was the Beggar sect branch where Zhang Il was stationed. The moment Wei Sanho read that letter, his heart shook with excitement. "I'm sorry, little brother. It was all my fault back then." In the very next instant, Wei Sanho's expression hardened. Then he shot into the air like a streak of light and hurried overnight toward the Beggar sect branch where Zhang Il was. This boy was called Kim Su-an, and he was Kim Yi-ran's younger brother. Despite his young age, he had already become the current head of Divine Hand Manor. As for Wei Yunho's arrival, he found it rather strange. Sleeping in a place that high and pretending to be some great hero? Kids these days learn a little half-baked kung fu and suddenly think they own the world. Just then, hurried knocking suddenly sounded from the gate. When the door was opened, they found a whole group of injured people outside. A landslide had occurred, and many workers from the quarry had been badly hurt. Divine Hand Manor had always carried on the ideal of healer's compassion. So the moment Kim Yi-ran heard they were wounded, she rushed out immediately. But there were simply too many injured people, and for a moment, even the siblings were scrambling to keep up. Kim Yi-ran was kind-hearted and gifted, and her acupuncture skill was second to none. Kim Su-an was just as anxious, but with so many patients, the two of them simply could not handle it all. At that moment, Kim Su-an looked up at Wei Yunho, who was sitting absent-mindedly on the roof. "Since you're a martial artist, you should know something about pressure points," he continued. "I will guide you, and you just need to help press this patient's channels." Wei Yunho's face instantly darkened. If martial artists could save people just like that, then what do we even need you doctors for? But Kim Su-an kept giving instructions anyway. First press Tiantu, Shanzhong, and Juke lightly. Then press Zhongfu, Yunmin, and Chongyang harder. Wei Yunho followed the instructions and pressed the points. But judging from the patient's condition, the man looked like he was almost gone. Kim Su-an immediately snapped, "You useless fool! A martial artist who can't even identify acupoints?" His chest is blocked by stagnant blood. We have to open his airway so he can cough it out. Since you don't understand the points, just use your mouth and suck it out directly. Wei Yunho immediately looked speechless. Was there really no other way? You actually want me to put my mouth on an old man? But if all he needed to do was get whatever was stuck in the man's throat out, then Wei Yunho figured he probably did have a way. In the next instant, Wei Yunho pressed the patient's Tiantu point with his right hand and covered the patient's mouth with his left. Then a strange suction force rose from his palm, and in an instant, it pulled the stagnant blood out of the man's chest. Wei Yunho wiped his hands and said flatly, "Kid, did you see that? I can save people my way just fine." That night, Kim Su-an came to visit Wei Yunho in his room. He lowered his head and apologized seriously. "I'm sorry, sir. I'm here to apologize for how rude I was to you during the day. You worked hard today, and thanks to you, we were able to get through it." A trace of seriousness showed on Kim Su-an's young face. He stated that he wanted to rebuild Divine Hand Manor, and he hoped to receive Wei Yunho's help. Wei Yunho sat up and said, "Rebuilding the manor itself isn't a huge problem, but your biggest issue right now is the lack of starting capital." Kim Su-an was confused. For a clinic, isn't medical skill the most important thing? Shouldn't money be a secondary concern? Wei Yunho responded by asking, "If that's true, then why did your family's business fail?" I even heard that the large clinic across the street used to belong to your family. Kim Soo-an lowered his head and sighed, saying the main reason had been his father. His father had always treated the poor for free, just like what they were still doing now, and everything his father did had been supported by burning through the wealth their ancestors had left behind. On top of that, he had hired many doctors to work in the clinic, so the money drained away extremely fast. In the end, they not only burned through their ancestral wealth, but also fell deeply into debt. What was worse, after being crushed by those debts, his father's personality completely changed, and he became addicted to gambling. He kept trying to challenge fate, but the more he gambled, the more he lost, until in the end he spent all his time drinking and gambling before dying and leaving behind a mountain of debt. Looking at Won Yeon-ho, Kim Soo-an thought to himself, since this gentleman came carrying a letter of introduction from the great scholar Mun Yu-hwan, he absolutely cannot be an ordinary person. And Won Yeon-ho, looking at this boy who was so young yet already had such insight, decided to take him to meet someone. That person was the pawnshop owner, Dae-pung. Won Yeon-ho planned to have Dae-pung invest in Kim Soo-an's clinic. For a profit-driven merchant like him, as long as there was money to be made, he would agree to anything. But Kim Soo-an clearly did not want to cooperate with a moneylender like that. Won Yeon-ho looked at him calmly. Kid, if you keep giving free treatment like your father did, can this clinic really survive? Even the property your ancestors left behind, wasn't it built up little by little? By actually charging people for treatment? If you don't want to completely ruin the family legacy your ancestors left you, then there are some things you have to do, no matter how unwilling you are. After hearing that, Kim Soo-an said nothing and simply fell into deep thought. After returning to his room, Won Yeon-ho also closed his eyes and thought in silence. Looking back on what had happened during the day, he could not help wondering if what he had said to the kid had been a bit too blunt. But just then, a man's loud shouting suddenly came from outside. This man, built like a brick wall and looking uncannily like Yujiro Hanma, was a member of the Black Spider Gang. Right now, he had one of the clinic's patients held tightly in his grip. He had come because Kim Yi-ran's father had once owed their gang a large sum of money, and now he was here to collect the debt. Kim Yi-ran immediately rushed out and shouted, "If you have a problem, take it up with me. Don't make things hard for my patient." The man threw the patient aside and sneered. "So you're saying you want me to come deal with you directly instead?" Then he violently grabbed Kim Yi-ran by the arm. He said viciously, "If you people hadn't kept refusing to pay back what you owe, I wouldn't have to resort to this." The man slowly lowered his head and said in a sinister tone, "Actually, there's a very good solution right now. We just sell you to a brothel. With looks like yours, that debt should be paid off very quickly." At that moment, Kim Soo-an also rushed forward, trying to help his sister. But in the very next second, he was kicked hard to the ground. The patients in the clinic who had once been helped by the siblings also rushed forward at that moment, trying to hold the man back. The man grew irritated, and just as he was about to strike again, Kim Yi-ran suddenly shouted, "Please don't hurt my patients. I'll go with you." The man immediately looked pleased. "You should have done that from the start. Would have saved everyone all this trouble." Kim Yi-ran looked toward Kim Soo-an in despair. She softly told him, "Soo-an, take good care of our clinic. I'll find a way to pay off the debt." Under everyone's gaze, Kim Yi-ran could only follow the man away. But just then, a voice suddenly sounded from behind them. "Wait, she can't go." The man turned around in surprise, wondering which bastard had shown up now. Won Yeon-ho looked at him coldly. "I already told you, you're not taking her." In the next instant, that man who looked like Yujiro Hanma was dropped flat to the ground by a light punch from Won Yeon-ho. That sight left Kim Yi-ran utterly stunned. Won Yeon-ho even said in a matter-of-fact tone, "Sorry, your attack just came too fast. That was only my instinctive reaction." The man panicked immediately, and the moment he saw Won Yeon-ho coming closer, he hurriedly stumbled backward to get away. He quickly lowered his head and apologized. "I'm sorry, my actions just now might indeed have gone a little too far. But the debt between us is backed by a clear contract. Even if this goes to court, the officials will still side with us, so I hope you will stop interfering." Won Yeon-ho looked at him calmly. "I had no real interest in interfering with your business anyway. But right now, isn't your biggest problem simply money? I can repay this debt for her, but you have to give me 2 weeks." The man was unwilling, but in the end, he still gritted his teeth and agreed. Elsewhere, Black Spider Gang leader Guak Du-san was extremely dissatisfied after hearing about this. He cursed on the spot. "That idiot! Did I send him there to actually collect money? I clearly only meant to use the debt as an excuse to smash the reputation of Divine Hand Manor. Yet that useless idiot managed to get chased off by some wet behind the ears brat. If this matter is botched, the people above might wipe out our whole gang." But in the next second, Guak Du-san's expression darkened. "If that brat really is as dangerous as they say, then we'll probably need a different approach." In the room, Kim Soo-an sat beside Won Yeon-ho's bed. He asked anxiously, "Sir, what exactly are you planning to do? Didn't you say you'd help us repay the debt within 2 weeks? But you've already been lying in bed for 3 straight days." Only then did Won Yeon-ho slowly sit up and look at him. I have my own plan. But before that, I first need to know exactly how much debt you owe right now. Kim Soo-in sighed and said, it's currently around 2,000 taels of silver. And that's only after we sold off part of the family property just to bring it down to this amount. Hearing that amount, even Wai Yeon-ho froze for a moment. That really is a bit outrageous. Then Wai Yeon-ho got up and said, let's go. Come make some money with me. Kim Soo-in was surprised. Where exactly are we going to make money? Wai Yeon-ho glanced sideways at him. Wherever your father lost his money, that's where we'll go and win it back. The gambling hall was thick with smoke, and everyone sitting there seemed convinced that they would be the final winner tonight. The casino owner, Kang Chon-ri, lounged there with an easy expression. He could not help wondering whether word had spread about how badly he fleeced gamblers. Lately, the number of suckers wandering in had clearly been getting smaller, but just then, one of his men came rushing in at full speed. Kang Chon-ri frowned at once. What was it now? Had the local officials come to collect taxes again? The man shook his head while panting. No, boss, it's not that. It looks like a massive sucker just walked into our casino. Meanwhile, inside the casino, Wai Yeon-ho was looking around with Kim Soo-in. Kim Soo-in looked worried. Are you really sure this is a good idea? At that moment, the same overeager attendant came running toward them with a wide smile plastered across his face. Honored guests, what would the two of you like to play? Wai Yeon-ho turned to him. What do people usually play for fun when they come to your place? The man's grin widened at once. We have everything here. It just depends on what kind of game the guest prefers. And the simplest one of all is right here. The rules are so easy, anyone can follow them. They just rolled dice and compared the result. All the guest had to do was guess whether the total number would come out odd or even. The man wore a sly grin. The odds on this one are perfectly split down the middle, so it's just right for a guest like you to test your luck. Wai Yeon-ho nodded along casually. It does sound simple enough. I think I'll give it a try. Everyone who stepped into a casino came in hoping to win money. But in the end, their money usually found its way straight into Kang Chon-ri's pocket. Every time he thought of that, Kang Chon-ri could not help feeling smug. That new sucker from earlier had probably already lost everything by now. But when he casually turned back to look, he discovered that the kid had won so much he was literally dozing off at the table. In another room, Jong-il, the Beggar's sect branch leader, was lying on the floor whistling in complete comfort. Ever since that brat had left, his days had been getting better and better. What pleased him most was that he had somehow found an old discarded door that fit perfectly into his room's doorway. At least this winter, he would not have to freeze anymore. But right then, the door in front of him suddenly exploded apart. In the next instant, a tall man stepped through. It was none other than Wai Yeon-ho's older brother, Wai San-ho. The scene startled Jong-il so badly he jumped, shouting, "Who the hell are you?" But Wai San-ho strode straight forward and grabbed him by the collar. Jong-il, I only want one answer. Is it really true that my younger brother is still alive? Jang-il was nearly strangled by the grip and could only struggle while gasping, "Calm down first. It's true. Now let me go." Only then did Wai San-ho release him. If that's true, then tell me right now, where is Wai Yeon-ho? Jang-il rubbed his neck with a pained expression. How am I supposed to know where he is now? If you want that answer, you'll have to ask that woman. In the next second, Jang-il was lifted up by Wai San-ho as easily as if he were a chick. Let's go. We're leaving right now. Jong-il forced out a bitter smile. He had only just managed to send away one plague god, and now a god of death had shown up instead. These two brothers really were insane in their own ways. Meanwhile, back at the intelligence branch, Gai Na-rang stood there glaring in fury. She pointed at Jong-il and cursed. Jong-il, you bastard. You actually brought the strongest righteous swordsman, the demon-slaying sword saint, right into my house. Today, I am settling this score with you. For Jong-il, this was yet another miserable chapter in his life. As for the casino, boss Kang Chon-ri had spent his days cheating and tricking people, and now retribution had finally arrived. Even if a gambling king personally stepped in, the situation could no longer be saved. After 5 years in the cave, honing his ability to judge direction by sound while dodging stones, Wai Yeon-ho now looked as though the god of gambling himself had descended. 9 out of 10 bets were built on deceit, and even the occasional mistake was usually part of the setup. And at the most crucial moment, Dae-pung from the pawn shop stepped in to cover the gap, and in the final round, they went completely all in. Kang Chon-ri was drenched in sweat, forced to listen to Dae-pung's mockery. You lunatic. In the end, those who scheme against others only destroy themselves. Kang Chon-ri had reached a dead end, and by now, regret meant nothing. Back at the clinic, Guak Du-san, the leader of the Black Spider Gang, had personally arrived after hearing what was happening. Wai Yeon-ho immediately paid back every last debt Divine Hand Manor owed, principal and interest included. But even after taking the money, Guak Du-san still refused to let things end there. Our debt with Divine Hand Manor is only a minor issue. What really matters is that you have interfered with our gang's operation. So I'm afraid you won't be leaving here so easily today. In the next instant, The men of the Black Spider Gang all drew their swords. It was obvious they had no intention of ending things peacefully. Guakdu-san gave a sinister smile. Today, I'll let you taste exactly what happens when you stick your nose where it doesn't belong. In a blink, numerous experts rushed forward all at once. Wei Yunho let out a faint cold smile. These people really were pushing their luck. In the next moment, a fierce current of force erupted around him, and inner power surged out of his body like a rising tide. Within a few breaths, all of those so-called experts were blasted flying. Guakdu-san stared in total shock. The man who looked like Yujiro Hanma quickly chimed in from the side. Boss, I told you from the start that he was no ordinary person, but you just wouldn't listen. Even though Guakdu-san was shaken deep down, the expression on his face clearly told Wei Yunho that he still had another card to play. And just then, several black-clad figures wearing cloaks slowly emerged from the darkness. They moved in complete coordination, their presence tightly concealed. At a glance, they were clearly not ordinary fighters. In the next second, one of the cloaked men suddenly thrust a sword toward Wei Yunho. The strike was strange and viciously precise. Caught off guard, Wei Yunho only barely managed to avoid it. That had been close. The sword had almost taken his life. But from that one strike, Wei Yunho recognized what it likely was. The legendary Shadow Blade. The Sword Emperor had once told him that this was an assassination sword art, whose only purpose was to kill without leaving a trace. Anyone who could wield such a sword style was a top-tier expert with countless lives on their hands. If one ever encountered people like that, there could be no carelessness at all. And Daepong, that sly fox, saw the danger at once, and somehow produced a treasured sword for Wei Yunho. The timing could not have been better. Wei Yunho told everyone to step farther back. The Shadow Blade fighters narrowed their eyes. Anyone who can dodge that strike really is a master. Attack together. In an instant, sword shadows crossed everywhere as the Shadow Blades rushed in from every tricky angle, their blades layering one over another. While lowering his head and twisting aside to dodge, Wisconsin Yunho also slashed forward with a fierce and swift strike, forcing the Shadow Blades back on the spot. Then he turned his wrist, gathering inner power in one motion. The blade swept upward at astonishing speed. One of the Shadow Blades had his weapon cut clean in half by that strike. Sword energy wrapped in overwhelming inner force slashed straight outward. In the blink of an eye, one Shadow Blade died on the spot. But the fight was not over. In the next instant, another Shadow Blade thrust a sword from behind Wei Yunho. This time, the attacker did not even manage to see how Wei Yunho drew his sword. He only felt his life slipping away. In the next second, the wound across his chest burst open, and his body slowly collapsed. Watching Wei Yunho dispose of two experts in mere moments, the remaining Shadow Blades were briefly thrown into confusion. But Wei Yunho clearly had no intention of giving them another chance. In the next instant, the aura around him surged violently. His powerful inner force turned into a nearly tangible wave that swept forward. Inner force and sword energy poured down like a waterfall. The Shadow Blades had nowhere to escape and were swallowed whole by that massive tide of sword force. That sight left Daepong and Kim Soo-an utterly stunned. Was this really still that harmless-looking young man from before? After sheathing his sword, Wei Yunho turned to look at Guakdu-san beside him. Guakdu-san had already gone pale, his whole body trembling in fear. Wei Yunho merely raised his fist a little, and it already triggered a reflexive defensive reaction from him. Wei Yunho stared at him coldly. What a useless piece of trash. Where did all that swagger from before go? Elsewhere, Gai Na-rang was truly scared senseless this time as well. No sooner had Wei San-ho, the demon-slaying sword saint, left than Wei Yunho's father, the sword saint Zhou Yi, appeared before her. And Wei Yunho's father did not look pleased. Miss, why do you seem to know my son's whereabouts so well? That scene immediately left Gai Na-rang drenched in cold sweat. But at the critical moment, Wei Yunho's mother suddenly made her move, using a sunflower point-twisting grip that made the old man hiss in pain. Then she let out a lioness roar. You old fool! You really have absolutely no sense of romance. When a grown woman pays this much attention to the whereabouts of another grown man, what else could that possibly mean? The mother turned back with a smile. So that means my son has already reached Divine Hand Manor? Then could you tell us where Divine Hand Manor is? Gai Na-rang was clearly still shaken and quickly said, I can send one of my informants to guide you there, but I cannot guarantee whether Wei Yunho is still at Divine Hand Manor or not. The mother's smile brightened at once. May I ask how old you are, and whether you are married? Gai Na-rang stiffened slightly. I am 26 this year, and still unmarried. Hearing that only made the mother look even more delighted. In that case, may your journey be a pleasant one. And at that moment, Gai Na-rang seemed to understand at least a little of what the mother was thinking. The Wei family had produced 3 sword saints in one generation. In the future, they would surely become one of the strongest contenders among the greatest families in the world. So she immediately said, then please wait here, mother. I will make the arrangements at once. The father, however, found the whole thing a little strange. This woman clearly doesn't seem especially attached to my son, yet now she suddenly changed her tune and started calling my wife mother. But sometimes, even a father had no say in matters like that. What they did not know, however, was that Wee Yun-ho was already on the verge of leaving Divine Hand Manor. After cutting down many Shadow Blade experts and facing Guak Dusan kneeling and begging for mercy, Wee Yun-ho ultimately crippled his martial arts. And on top of that, he wiped out the Black Spider Gang's base entirely. At the same time, Kim Soo-an agreed to work with Dae-pung to rebuild Divine Hand Manor. But the boy was still too young, so he needed a bit of pressure. For that reason, Wee Yun-ho made it completely clear: the debt I repaid on your behalf will have to be paid back little by little out of the money you earn rebuilding Divine Hand Manor. Kim Soo-an was immediately confused. Since you already paid the debt for me, why are you now asking me for money again? Wee Yun-ho looked at him calmly. There is no such thing as a free lunch. Paying off your debt is itself an investment, so naturally you have to work hard and pay that debt back over time. If you're unhappy with that, then the answer is simple. You can repay the full 2,000 taels of silver to me right now. Kim Soo-an gritted his teeth and signed his name, but his face was full of displeasure. So this is what people call a contract of selling oneself. After that, he could only leave the room in silence, feeling deeply frustrated. He had just escaped the debts to the Black Spider Gang, only to fall right into another trap here. At his young age, the whole thing left him a little unable to make peace with it. But just then, he suddenly heard the conversation inside the room, and it sounded a little different from what he had imagined. It turned out that Dae-pung was asking Wee Yun-ho, why do you value Kim Soo-an so highly? Though Divine Hand Manor has a great reputation, it doesn't seem like something you truly need. And on top of that, pouring in such a large amount of money doesn't seem to bring you any obvious benefit at all. Wee Yun-ho paused for a moment, then spoke in a profound tone. Kim Soo-an might still be young, but he will definitely achieve great things in the future. He will definitely rebuild Divine Hand Manor and become a famous physician, so I must give him this chance, because one day he will save countless lives. Standing outside the door, Kim Soo-an was deeply moved. He had never expected Wee Yun-ho to think so highly of him, but after he left, Wee Yun-ho and Dae-pung exchanged a look and laughed. Fooling a kid really was way too easy. On the day of Divine Hand Manor's reopening ceremony, Kim Soo-an appeared in full dress as the new head of the household. Guests came in an endless stream, and even the governor showed up in person. The governor spoke in a solemn tone. The rebuilding of the Kim family's Divine Hand Manor is a blessing for the people. As governor, I now formally announce that Divine Hand Manor has been re-established. But in the very next moment, that same governor was sweating heavily in front of Wee Yun-ho. That was because, while wiping out the Black Spider Gang, Wee Yun-ho had found the account book showing dealings between Guak Dusan and him. So Wee Yun-ho only said one thing: I hope the governor will take good care of Divine Hand Manor from now on. As for that account book, I will naturally keep it safe for you. Most matters had now been settled. But when it came to Divine Hand Manor, Kim Ye-ran and her younger brother still fell into disagreement. She believed that a healer's compassion should never become a tool for profit. Kim Soo-an understood that better than anyone, but now that the arrow had already left the bow, there was no turning back. For years, compassion and healing had not even been enough to sustain the family's most basic livelihood. For the first time, the siblings found themselves in such a fierce disagreement over this matter, and their unhappy parting seemed to seal the fact that they would walk different paths from now on. The girl stood by the railing, drinking alone. The young man came to see her at night, and they talked face to face for a long time, but by then, much of it could no longer be changed. Kim Ye-ran also gradually came to understand that rebuilding Divine Hand Manor would never be easy for Kim Soo-an. As the long night stretched on, the sorrow in her heart slowly began to ease. After Wee Yun-ho's counsel, she also decided to continue treating the sick in a different way. Back at Divine Hand Manor, Kim Soo-an received the farewell letter Wee Yun-ho had left behind. Reading this letter is like seeing me in person. I have decided to leave, and from now on, you will have to run the clinic on your own. Do not become too greedy for money. I believe that you will one day become a great doctor and manage Divine Hand Manor well. And finally, remember to save the profits. When the time is right, I will return to collect them. In a remote mountain village, a young woman was tending to the wounded, dressed simply, with a calm smile between her brows. That young woman was Kim Ye-ran. Time rewinds to the eve of Wee Yun-ho's departure from Divine Hand Manor. He slowly walked over from the distance. Kim Ye-ran really did move fast. After that, the two of them made their way to the side of a waterfall and stream. Watching Kim Ye-ran continue treating people for free these past few days, Wee Yun-ho could not help asking, have you ever calculated how much silver you've actually spent? The truth is, you didn't have to go this far. Kim Ye-ran looked calm and at peace. Everyone walks a different road. I am simply rebuilding Divine Hand Manor in my own way. Wee Yun-ho handed the bundle in his arms to Kim Ye-ran. I support your decision, but you still shouldn't have sold all those things, so I brought this jewelry back for you. Kim Ye-ran opened the bundle and found the jewelry she had pawned inside. At once, she understood. So the keepsake from her mother that had been returned last time had also been sent back by him. Now that everything had been settled, Wee Yeon-ho turned to leave and formally said his goodbye. But just then, Kim Yi-ran suddenly called out to stop him. She took out a blue ribbon and softly said, "Your hair is always a mess. I hope you will accept this ribbon." After tying on the ribbon, Wee Yeon-ho finally turned and took his leave. The martial world is vast. We will meet again if fate allows. After bidding farewell to Divine Hand Manor and to Kim Yi-ran, Wee Yeon-ho set out once more on a new journey. For someone who would always rather lie down than stand, hitching a ride was obviously the first thing he needed to do, and the honest-looking old man in front of him simply smiled and said that was fine. As expected, lying down really was more comfortable, but not long after, the old man woke him up. "Young man, I'm afraid we'll have to part ways here." With no other choice, Wee Yeon-ho got down from the cart with obvious reluctance. It seemed he was destined to sleep out in the wild tonight. Under the bright moon and sparse stars, Wee Yeon-ho told the old man to take care. But what he had not expected was that this honest-looking old man was anything but simple. Not long after Wee Yeon-ho left, a young woman appeared behind the old man. The old man slowly peeled the human skin mask off his face, revealing a scar-covered face beneath it. He spoke in a low voice. "Blue Moon, that child seems to have already noticed your presence." Those words made the young woman's heart tighten. I had hidden myself extremely well. I didn't expect him to still notice me. The old man then gave another order, telling her to continue investigating the boy's true identity. Elsewhere, after the old man left, Wee Yeon-ho seemed to have found himself a very good place to rest. In the forest not far away, a girl was running desperately, and it was obvious her strength was already close to its limit. In her urgency, she needed to find somewhere to hide as quickly as possible. She looked up and decided that the large tree in front of her seemed to be a perfect hiding place. In the next second, she leaped up into the tree. The girl was visibly tense, thinking to herself, "I need to use the turtle breath technique immediately to conceal my aura." But in the very next moment, she felt that something was wrong. Why did it feel like someone else's aura was here too? So she slightly turned her head and glanced over her shoulder. That single look startled her into crying out, because there was actually a guy lying in the tree asleep. That cry instantly woke Wee Yeon-ho from his sleep. But before he could react, the girl lunged over and covered his mouth. She whispered urgently, "I'm being pursued, so please, do not make a sound, or both of us will be in danger." Right then, several men appeared beneath the tree. They were searching separately for the girl's trail. Only after watching them gradually move away did the girl finally let out a long sigh of relief. But in the next second, Wee Yeon-ho looked at her coldly. "Could you move a little? With you pressing your whole body down on me like this, you're seriously heavy." He was clearly annoyed. "I was sleeping perfectly well, and then you rushed over and woke me up." The girl suddenly realized what she was doing. Looking embarrassed, she hastily let go of the hand covering Wee Yeon-ho's mouth, but she still explained nervously, "I'm sorry, but if those people had discovered us just now, we really would have been finished. Those guys don't spare anyone." Her expression tightened even more. "This is all my fault. I'll find a way to get both of us out of here safely." So next, Wee Yeon-ho could only get up and reluctantly follow her. As they moved, the girl introduced herself. "My name is Seoman Yan, from the Seoman family. I'm currently carrying out a mission for the Martial Alliance." Wee Yeon-ho glanced at her. "Then who exactly was chasing you just now?" Seoman Yan immediately spun around in alarm and hissed, "Could you lower your voice? Do you want to bring the pursuers right back?" She then told him seriously, "The people chasing me, they are from the demonic cult." Wee Yeon-ho looked a little surprised. "Wasn't that sect wiped out a long time ago?" Seoman Yan grew anxious. "Those are only the remnants left behind after the demonic cult was destroyed, and this matter is extremely serious." Wee Yeon-ho looked at her and said flatly, "Maybe you misunderstood me. I just wanted to confirm it." In the next instant, he suddenly raised his voice and called out toward the dark woods. "All right, you can come out now. I already know who you are." And just like that, several men slowly emerged from the darkness. The sight made Seomun Yan break out in a cold sweat. One of the men stared coldly at Wee Yeon-ho. "Are you also from the Martial Alliance?" Wee Yeon-ho stayed calm. "I have nothing to do with the Martial Alliance. If anything, I usually try to avoid dealing with them." The man's expression darkened. "I'm willing to believe that, but I'd much rather turn you into a corpse all the same." At that moment, Seomun Yan suddenly stepped in front of Wee Yeon-ho. She hurriedly said, "This man knows nothing. Please, let him go." She looked utterly desperate. "If you let him leave, I will tell you everything I know." The man immediately showed a wicked smile. "That sounds like a very good deal." But just then, Wee Yeon-ho leaned out from behind Seomun Yan. "I have a question. Did you guys forget that you're demonic cult remnants?" The men were momentarily speechless, nearly breaking into a cold sweat. Is this kid out of his damn mind? We were literally just about to let him walk. Wee Yeon-ho, however, only smiled. "Since you've already let me know that you're from the demonic cult, I have no intention of letting you leave, because my father once warned me that if I ever come across anyone from the demonic cult, I absolutely must not let them off lightly. The group looked at him in disbelief. Just who the hell are you, brat? And what gives your father the right to say something like that? Yahello looked back at them calmly. My father is the head of the Y family, and his name contains the character Zhong. Their expressions instantly changed. Your father is Wei Zhongho, the sword saint of justice of the Y family? In the next instant, one of the men suddenly attacked Wei Yunho. Once you're dead, go complain to your father then. In a flash, Wei Yunho shoved Xiao Manyan away from his side. At the same time, he raised the object wrapped in strips of cloth in his hand and blocked the attack. After failing to land the blow, the man immediately pulled back. He was clearly a well-trained fighter. That strike also shook loose the cloth wrapped around Wei Yunho's weapon. When the strips fell away, the sword hidden inside was revealed. Wei Yunho slowly drew it, and the blade slid free. He pointed the sword at the demonic cult remnants before him. You'd better get ready, because my sword may be even sharper than my father's. That scene was also seen clearly by the old man and his companion standing not far away. They were visibly surprised. So he is actually the second son of the Sword Saint of Justice. But if that is true, why has the martial world never heard of him? An expert like this should have stood out long ago. Blue Moon answered in a low voice. According to rumor, he had vanished for many years. Something must have happened during that time to make him this strong. A cruel glint appeared in the old man's eyes. To have reached this level of martial skill at such an age, truly unexpected. Meanwhile, Xiao Manyan was also staring in shock. She had assumed Wei Yunho was just an idiot, but not only had he suddenly stepped in, it even looked like he wasn't using his full strength. Just the casual sword energy from his swings was already enough to force those demonic cult remnants on the defensive. Right after Wei Yunho dropped one of them with an elbow strike, another flew in from behind him, but that attack missed as well. The sight instantly drenched the man in cold sweat. Wei Yunho had simply vanished. In the next moment, Wei Yunho suddenly appeared behind him. With one kick, the man was knocked out cold. In mere moments, those two were already down and unmoving. And at that very moment, two more demonic cult men rushed him at once. The long spear in one man's hand swept past Wei Yunho, carrying a fierce, piercing aura with it. But in the next second, Wei Yunho leapt into the air and kicked both men down in one motion. In only a few breaths, all of them had been laid out by him. In the next moment, Wei Yunho's sword danced in a blur of motion. He severed all of their wrist and ankle tendons. Perhaps having their martial arts ruined was the best ending they could hope for. But right then, black-red demonic energy suddenly rose from one man's hand. His face twisted savagely as he shouted, "All of you, get up!" In the next second, the ones who had just fallen all erupted back into motion. Even though their tendons had clearly been severed, they still forced themselves back to their feet. Wei Yunho looked at them coldly. I didn't expect you to still be able to stand. One of the demonic cult men glared at him and said coldly, Looks like your father never told you everything about the demonic cult. Wei Yunho simply rolled his shoulder. It doesn't matter. I'll just have to chop your legs off then. In a flash, the four demonic cult experts attacked him again at the same time. At that sight, Wei Yunho was reminded of his father's teaching. In real combat, mercy toward the enemy is often the greatest mistake of all. In the blink of an eye, two of the experts had already lunged right in front of him. And this time, Wei Yunho decided he would not hold back anymore. Under the moonlight, sword shadows flashed like lightning and blood burst through the air. One of the cult remnants was decapitated on the spot, and even his sword hilt was blown away. In the next instant, the remaining two rushed him again. But at that moment, Wei Yunho noticed Xiao Manyan behind him. If he dodged, the attack would definitely hit her. In the next second, the sword in his hand blurred into motion, leaving no trace. He drove its speed to the limit, his body moving with the blade. His figure began spinning at high speed with the sword, and the blade, wrapped in inner power, turned into a devastating cyclone of sword aura. With that single slash, the demonic cult remnants finally felt the true fear of death. The massive sword energy crashed all the way down, crushing into the ground. Even the shockwave from its aftermath swept all the way up to the mountain peak, and the old man on the summit watched the scene with clear interest. When the dust finally cleared, the four demonic cult men were revealed inside the crater. One of them wore a grim expression, clearly the only survivor left. The next second, a pill slipped into his mouth. He was obviously trying to kill himself with poison. Wei Yunho glanced at Xiao Manyan and asked coldly, "Do you want him alive? Answer me." Xiao Manyan hurriedly nodded. Just as that man tried to swallow the pill, Wei Yunho raised his right hand and said in a chilling tone, "So you're trying to die?" In the blink of an eye, he locked his hand around the man's throat, and the guy was forced by that sudden crushing force to spit the pill right back out. Wei Yunho picked up the pill and said flatly, "These people really are something. They even pulled out their own teeth and replaced them with poison. They really treat their own lives like dirt. After cutting down the 4 experts of the demonic cult, Wei Yunho followed Xiao Munyan to the Martial Alliance. The guard at the entrance of the Shenyang branch looked at them in surprise, clearly unable to figure out why Xiao Munyan was dragging a grown man all the way there. Xiao Munyan dropped the surviving cultist onto the ground, then said through heavy breaths, "We captured a demonic martial artist. I couldn't take him to headquarters alone, so I came here for help first." The guard stared at her in a daze. "You picked the wrong time. The most we can offer is a carriage, because rumors just broke out that a martial arts manual has been discovered." Xiao Manyan blinked in confusion. "You mean every member of the Alliance went after that manual?" The guard scratched his head. "That's right. Everyone moved out. That manual is critically important. It's said to be the inheritance of the legendary Sword Emperor." Even Xiao Manyan lost her composure when she heard that. "The Sword Emperor's inheritance?" Standing beside her, Wei Yunho looked over and asked, "Who exactly is this Sword Emperor?" He was honestly speechless. That old man had already passed his inheritance to him. So where was this new inheritance supposed to have come from? Xiao Manyan could only feel awkward at his dismissive attitude. In her eyes, the Sword Emperor was an existence who stood even above legends like Zhang Sanfeng or Bodhidharma. After borrowing a carriage from the Alliance branch, the two of them set off again. Xiao Manyan couldn't understand why Wei Yunho was still following her, so she asked, "Don't you have anywhere better to go? Like chasing that Sword Emperor inheritance or something?" Wei Yunho lounged lazily inside the carriage. "I have no interest in that stuff." He then added, "Besides, I don't really have a destination anyway. Going anywhere is all the same to me." As the sun sank into the horizon, the carriage rolled to a stop by a campfire at the foot of a mountain. Xiao Manyan finally asked, "What exactly is your relationship with the demon-slaying sword saint, Wei Sanho?" Wei Yunho told her that Wei Sanho was his older brother. The next second, a smile actually spread across Xiao Manyan's face, and from that expression alone, it was obvious she was full of admiration for his brother. A moment later, Wei Yunho shut the carriage door and said flatly, "I'm done talking to you. Go to sleep." Xiao Manyan was speechless. Inwardly, she cursed. This guy really is a damn jerk. Compared to him, Wei Sanho is a true gentleman. Just then, 3 figures emerged from the darkness. One of them spoke up. "Sorry to bother you. We got lost in the mountains." The 3 of them looked at Xiao Manyan. "Would it be possible for us to share your campfire for the night?" Seeing the caution in her eyes, the trio seemed to realize they should identify themselves first. One of them lifted his hat and said, "I am Zhou Yang from the Blessing Sect. We've been tracking down demonic martial artists." Xiao Manyan quickly stood and saluted them. "So you're from a branch sect under Wudang. I've heard of your esteemed sect before." Then, as they conversed, she asked in confusion, "I heard you're chasing demonic martial artists?" Zhou Yang looked at her and nodded. "That's right. We're hunting down a notorious plum blossom thief." The moment she heard that, Xiao Manyan shot to her feet. "A plum blossom thief?" Zhou Yang froze for a second. "It seems you've heard of him too. It's Seoju, the Western region expert who uses the fireworks palm." But right then, the carriage door behind them was suddenly thrown open, and Zhou Yang instantly felt a chilling wave of killing intent from his back. It was so intense that all 3 of them jumped up and drew their swords in front of themselves. A young man stepped out with fury written all over his face, only for that anger to twist into something almost crazed. Right before the stunned eyes of Zhou Yang and the other 2, Wei Yunho leaped down from the carriage. He raised his right hand and said through gritted teeth, "Even after all these years, I still haven't forgotten that bastard. If it weren't for him, I never would have suffered so much under that old geezer, the Sword Emperor. That old man pelted me with rocks for 5 whole years." With violent rage flashing in his eyes, Wei Yunho demanded, "Where is that bastard now?" Zhou Yang looked at him and answered hesitantly, "I'm not completely sure, but I do know the general direction he fled in." Wei Yunho waved his hand decisively. "Then what are we waiting for? Let's move." Xiao Manyan looked at him with concern. "It's already night. Won't that be too dangerous?" But a cruel, excited smile lit up Wei Yunho's face instead. "Dangerous? For him, maybe, because I am the danger." In the darkness, a man was sprinting forward at full speed. The plum blossom thief, Seoju, glanced back over his shoulder, knowing it was only a matter of time before he got caught. The Sword Emperor's inheritance had appeared, drawing martial artists from all across the Central Plains, and in his hand was that very manual. A dark, vicious look crossed his face. "Those damn bastards. If I can master this manual, then within a few years, I'll become a true supreme master of the martial world." But just then, a voice came from ahead of him. "Life really is interesting, don't you think?" Seoju looked up sharply, only to find that the person standing there was a woman. The woman revealed her identity. "I'm Li Xiaohua of the Huasan sect. At the very least, you deserve to know who's about to kill you." Seoju looked at Li Xiaohua with open contempt. "Kill me? Are you serious?" The next second, Li Sol-ha launched her attack. Die, you filthy beast! A cold sneer rose on Seo-ju's face. It seemed that after staying out of the martial world for so many years, far too many people had started underestimating him. What Li Sol-ha used was the Hwasan sect's Plum Blossom sword. The instant her blade left its sheath, the sword light scattered like drifting plum petals. Seo-ju's face twisted with madness as he mocked her. Your flower hasn't even fully bloomed yet. Half a plum blossom counts as a sword now? In the next instant, plum blossom like palm intent bloomed from his own hand as well. Li Sol-hwa, who had come to take his life, was instantly swallowed by palm winds that spread over her like a storm of falling blossoms. In just one move, her sword was knocked from her hand, and she crashed hard onto the ground. No one knew what was running through her mind in that moment. Maybe she was regretting her own recklessness. Seo-ju slowly walked toward her, his tone cold and lecherous. You still don't understand how cruel this world is. Tonight, I'll teach you what it means to be a real woman. Looking at the plum blossom mark on her lower abdomen, Li Sol-hwa realized she could no longer move at all. Seo-ju slowly lifted her chin and smiled in a way that made her skin crawl. What a fine beauty. But just then, a voice suddenly came from behind him. I finally found you. Seo-ju let go of Li Sol-hwa and spun around, only to see a young man standing there with crazed excitement written all over his face. Seo-ju couldn't help being taken aback. Was this guy actually an idiot? Woo Yeon-ho looked at him and asked coldly, So you're the plum blossom thief, Seo-ju? Seo-ju rose to his feet and sneered. That's right, I am. You came to hunt me too, just like the others? Then all you've done is shorten your own lifespan. But the moment his identity was confirmed, the smile on Woo Yeon-ho's face only grew wider. In the next second, his whole body blurred into an afterimage, instantly making Seo-ju realize something was wrong. By the time Seo-ju reacted, Woo Yeon-ho had already appeared behind him. Seo-ju's eyes sharpened. In an instant, the plum blossom mark reappeared in his palm strike cutting through the air with terrifying force. The next second, his hand seemed to tear straight through Woo Yeon-ho's body. The sight of it filled Li Sol-hwa with despair. She thought yet another innocent person was about to die at this criminal's hands. But only Seo-ju knew the truth. That strike looked vicious, yet it had hit absolutely nothing. In the moment, he froze. A fist had already smashed into his face. In the very next instant, a terrifying force exploded through him. Under that overwhelming impact, Seo-ju was blasted straight backward on the spot. The man who had been acting so arrogantly a second ago was now lying flat on the ground, unable to get back up. The blow left his entire body trembling, as if every ounce of strength had been drained from him. Woo Yeon-ho looked down at him coldly. Good boy. Don't collapse so fast. This still isn't nearly enough for me. In the next second, his entire aura exploded. Everything I've suffered these past 5 years is because of you, you bastard. Watching Woo Yeon-ho rush him again, Seo-ju shouted desperately, Wait, I don't even know who you are. But the only answer he got was Woo Yeon-ho's merciless fist. So Seo-ju was smashed into the ground once again. Looking at Seo-ju sprawled there, unable to get up, Woo Yeon-ho still didn't seem satisfied. This was nowhere near enough to settle the rage burning inside him. There was no way he would let it end this easily. Then he spotted 2 rocks on the ground. He bent down, picked them up, and looked at Seo-ju. For the past 5 years, I've been desperately chasing one feeling. It was a cruel truth nobody could understand without living through it themselves. Woo Yeon-ho grinned with savage excitement, gritting his teeth. And that is, getting smashed with a rock hurts a hell of a lot more than a fist. As soon as the words left his mouth, he raised the rock and began viciously smashing it down onto Seo-ju. Just then, Jo Yang and Seo Man-yan finally arrived at the scene. The moment Seo Man-yan saw what was happening, cold sweat instantly broke out on her back. Woo Yeon-ho was holding a rock and mercilessly battering the man on the ground like a madman. In the next second, she rushed up and grabbed him from behind. Young master, stop! If you keep this up, you're really going to beat him to death. But Woo Yeon-ho's fury had not faded in the slightest. The moment he remembered that all his suffering over the years had happened because of this man, the flames in his chest only burned hotter. Seo Man-yan looked at the bloody, battered man on the ground. Is he really the plum blossom thief everyone has been hunting? She had never imagined a human face could be beaten into such an unrecognizable bloody pulp. After that, they decided to escort the captured Seo-ju to the Martial Alliance. Looking at Seo-ju's face, swollen into an unrecognizable mess, Jo Yang and the others couldn't help sighing inwardly. Woo Yeon-ho really is brutal when he snaps. Just then, Li Sol-hwa suddenly started feeling unwell. Seo Man-yan quickly moved over to support her. Miss, are you all right? You don't look too good. Woo Yeon-ho turned to look at Li Sol-hwa, then said in a calm but firm tone, Give me your wrist. Li Sol-hwa looked a little stiff and tried to refuse. It's fine. I'm not that bad. But Woo Yeon-ho grabbed her wrist directly. Don't move. Your injury is more serious than you think. Right after that, Wee Yeon-ho fell into brief thought. Truth be told, when it came to this kind of medical treatment, he was not exactly an expert himself. He looked at Lee Sol-hwa and said, "If you don't get treated now, you could lose your martial arts." Those words instantly drained the color from her face. To a martial artist, losing their martial arts was no different from becoming a cripple. Wee Yeon-ho continued, "I can treat you, but I'll need to place my hand on your lower abdomen." Lee Sol-hwa immediately grew embarrassed. She had not expected it would require touching a place like that. Wee Yeon-ho looked at her and said evenly, "I respect your choice." Her expression turned heavy as she thought to herself, "I've never even let a man touch me before. But no matter what, it's still better than never being able to hold a sword again." A moment later, blushing, she revealed the plum blossom mark on her lower abdomen and said softly, "Young master, I'll have to trouble you then. Please treat me." Meanwhile, on the other side, Wee San-ho arrived at Divine Hand Manor with Jong-il. At first, Daepong looked at them with obvious disdain, because one looked like a beggar, while the other certainly did not seem like someone with money either. But the moment Wee San-ho coldly revealed his identity, cold sweat instantly began pouring down Daepong's back. He didn't dare show even a hint of disrespect anymore. In the next second, he turned and ran. "Please wait a moment, my lords. I'll go invite the manor lord to receive you right away." At that exact same time, another carriage arrived outside Divine Hand Manor. The person stepping down from it was none other than Wee Yeon-ho's father, Wee Jung-ho. Seeing that his father had come too, Wee San-ho was visibly stunned. And when Wee Yeon-ho's mother heard that her eldest son was here as well, she immediately got out of the carriage too. And just like that, everyone searching for Wee Yeon-ho had miraculously gathered at Divine Hand Manor. But the next piece of news left all of them completely disheartened. The moment they heard Wee Yeon-ho had already left, Wee Jung-ho was filled with disappointment, while his mother was full of complaints. She couldn't help but point at her husband and complain, "This is all because of you, old man. I told you we should have moved faster." Just then, Daepong returned with Kim Soo-in, and when everyone learned that this young child was actually the current master of Divine Hand Manor, they could hardly believe it. Kim Soo-in said seriously, "My benefactor showed great kindness to Divine Hand Manor. Since my benefactor's parents and brother are here, I must receive you properly." He even insisted on arranging a meal and a place for them to rest. Seeing how sincere he was, the group could only agree to stay for the time being. After days of traveling, Wee Jung-ho was indeed starving, and his appetite finally came back. But Wee Yeon-ho's mother had no appetite at all because she was simply too worried about her son. Wee San-ho could only keep trying to comfort her. "Mother, you really need to eat something. Only if you stay healthy will we have the strength to keep searching for little brother." But the days of non-stop travel had clearly made her visibly thinner. Noticing that, Kim Soo-in quickly said, "If my benefactor's mother was feeling unwell, you should have told me sooner." He immediately ordered Daepong to summon the best physician available to help her recover. But right then, arrogant shouts suddenly came from outside, instantly cutting off their conversation. More than 10 dark figures slowly emerged at the manor gate. Guak Do-san wore an arrogant grin as he sneered, "I've been waiting for that damned bastard to leave. And today, this moment has finally come." The moment Kim Soo-in saw him, a chill ran straight through his body. It turned out Guak Do-san had borrowed new men from the Black Crow gang, and right now, his face was full of vicious confidence. "Today, I'm going to slaughter every single one of you." But just then, a figure slowly walked across the stone bridge. It was none other than the demon-slaying sword saint, Wee San-ho. In the next instant, the men of the Black Crow gang all sprang upward and rushed straight at him. A chilling, killing intent flashed through Wee San-ho's eyes as he coldly stared ahead. Then he drew his sword and slashed forward, releasing several fierce bursts of sword energy in an instant. Sword shadows flashed, cold light streaked across the air, and wherever that strike passed, absolutely no one could escape. In the blink of an eye, Wee San-ho sheathed his sword again, while the Black Crow gang men all collapsed to the ground, either dead or crippled, with not a single one left standing. The sight was downright terrifying. Wee San-ho looked coldly at Guak Do-san. "Clean up this place. Repair the gate you destroyed. Then, take me to where you gathered your men." Meanwhile, back in the forest, Wee Yeon-ho's treatment had just begun. He first had Lee Sol-ho lie flat on the ground, then pressed his palm against the injured spot on her lower abdomen. By then, Lee Sol-hwa's face had already turned deathly pale, and she was clearly in immense pain. In the next moment, Wee Yeon-ho slowly gathered his inner power into his palm. Under the force of that energy, Lee Sol-hwa's body tensed as she let out a soft, suppressed moan. Wee Yeon-ho reminded her, "Hold on. It'll be over soon." His inner force flowed into her dantian like a gentle stream, and the plum blossom mark on her abdomen gradually began to fade away. After some time passed, the mark on her lower abdomen had disappeared completely. Even Wee Yeon-ho looked slightly tired after it was done. "Just get some proper rest now, and there shouldn't be any more major problems." The sun rose in the east. Migratory birds swept south, and a brand new morning arrived once again. After a full night of rest, Xiaoman Yan still felt sore all over. Compared to her, Li Solhua had slept extremely well that night. After a full night of recovery, she could clearly feel that her body was far better than it had been yesterday. But just then, the two women suddenly heard a rather unpleasant voice from nearby. A man stood before them and said coldly, "If you're this weak, then you're not qualified to be my disciple." Li Solhua hurriedly got up and saluted, because this man was none other than her master, Guigong Muzhong, the plum blossom sword of the Huasan sect. Xiaoman Yan also quickly bowed to him. "Greetings, senior. I am Xiaoman Yan of the Xiaoman family." Guigong Muzhong looked at her. "Then you must be the daughter of MangaCapped," he continued. "Was it you who saved my disappointing disciple last night?" Beside the carriage, Xiaoju was tied up like a bundle, and Xiaoman Yan took the chance to explain everything that had happened the night before. Meanwhile, back inside Divine Hand Manor, Zhang Il ran in excitedly. "I found news about young Master Y." Those words instantly lit up Y Yunho's parents with hope. Zhang Il quickly reported, "The Beggar sect disciple spotted a young man in Xinyang who looks exactly like young Master Y." Y Zhongho made his decision at once. "Then we leave for Xinyang right now." But just then, someone suddenly entered through the doorway, leaving Y Yunho's parents a little confused. The newcomer was Kim Yi-ran. She had come on Kim Suan's orders, and the moment she entered, she bowed and said, "Greetings to my benefactor's family. I am Kim Yi-ran, the eldest daughter of Divine Hand Manor." Y Zhongho looked at her and said politely, "It is a pleasure to meet you, Miss Kim." A look of remembrance appeared on Kim Yi-ran's face. "The young master saved me many times. The weight of the kindness I owe him is beyond words." But the instant his mother heard that, her eyes lit up at once. In the very next moment, she practically rushed in front of Kim Yi-ran. "Miss Kim, what brings you here today?" Kim Yi-ran quickly explained respectfully, "Madam, I was sent here to help regulate your health." His mother immediately beamed. "I see. Then tell me, how old are you this year? Are you married? And what do you think of my younger son?" That scene left the three people nearby drenched in awkwardness. At the same time, Guigong Muzhong had also more or less figured out what had happened the previous night. He frowned at the bound Xiaoju beside the carriage. "You're saying this man easily defeated Xiaohua so overwhelmingly that she couldn't even withstand a single move?" But when he looked at Xiaoju's current miserable state, he had no choice but to believe it. Guigong Muzhong's face turned grave as he looked at Li Solhua. "Solhua, you were defeated by this villain in one move. Were you careless?" Li Solhua lowered her head and answered, "I was not careless, master." Guigong Muzhong's expression remained flat. "If you went all out and still couldn't survive even one move, then that only means your opponent was truly powerful." But his tone was still harsh. "A strong opponent is never an excuse. If you had really fought with everything you had, then even dying by his hand would have earned my respect." Guigong Muzhong turned away and scolded her coldly. "Yet as my disciple, you actually needed someone else to save you after being attacked." His expression became solemn. "That settles it. Once we return, you will reflect behind closed doors." In the next moment, Guigong Muzhong walked toward the carriage. "Now then, let me meet the person who saved my disciple." He stopped in front of the carriage door and said in a deep voice, "Has your excellency inside awakened?" But no answer came from inside the carriage. Suppressing his impatience, he knocked again. "Has your excellency awakened?" At that moment, the carriage door was finally thrown open from within. Li Yunho glanced at him and said lazily, "It's early in the morning. Why are you waking me up?" Guigong Muzhong's face darkened slightly. It was true that anyone would be annoyed after being dragged out of sleep, but when he remembered that the man before him had, after all, saved his disciple, he forcibly suppressed his temper. Guigong Muzhong looked at Y Yunho and said deeply, "I heard that you were the one who saved my disciple." He continued, "My disciple is Li Solhua. She is over there. I came here specifically to thank you." In the next second, the carriage door slammed shut again, and only a dismissive voice drifted out from inside. "All right, I got it." That scene made the veins on Guigong Muzhong's forehead throb. Gritting his teeth in anger, he demanded, "Since I came to express my gratitude, does your excellency not even understand the basic courtesy of showing yourself?" In the next moment, a terrifying aura suddenly erupted from his body. That dreadful pressure instantly made Li Solhua and Xiaoman Yan tremble so hard they could barely remain standing. At that moment, Wei Yunho opened the carriage door again and looked at him coldly. "Didn't you already thank me? I'm still trying to sleep here. So how about you just say thank you one more time and get lost?" Guigong Muzhong stared fixedly at Y Yunho, laughing out of sheer anger. "Your excellency certainly acts high and mighty. Just who exactly are you?" Y Yunho casually ran a hand through his messy hair, then said indifferently, "Even if I told you my name, there's a good chance you still wouldn't know me." Hearing that, Guigong Muzhong's face turned completely dark. "It seems your excellency thinks very little of my experience." His expression turned ice cold. his hand already resting on his sword hilt. Since your excellency is so arrogant, then this old man has no choice but to test your martial arts for himself. Does your excellency dare to exchange a few moves with me? Those words instantly made Li Solhua panic. Master, this isn't right. That sentence lit Gui Gong Muzhong's fury on the spot. Ungrateful disciple, you dare lecture me on what's right and wrong. Li Solhua hurriedly dropped to her knees. Master, I'm sorry, but a duel without proper cause is wrong. Gui Gong Muzhong finally stopped hiding the edge in his voice. I'm a man who carries the weight of Hwasan on my back, so tell me, between your life-saving debt and my honor, which one matters more? To be looked down on by some nameless nobody who does not even dare reveal his sect or martial arts is the same as looking down on the entire Hwasan sect. Li Solhua looked deeply wronged. She understood her master too well. If this continued, young Master Y was definitely going to be dragged into trouble. Just then, Xiao Manyan stepped forward and tried to comfort her in a low voice. Don't worry, even if your master wants it. As long as young Master Y refuses, this spar can't happen at all. No one can force a life-saving benefactor into a fight. And young Master Y is the kind of man who hates even walking a few extra steps, so there's no way he'd accept a challenge like this. But this time, Xiao Manyan had clearly guessed wrong, because that old man had once taught Y Yunho that, although he could do whatever he pleased in life, anyone who dared challenge his swordsmanship had to be taught one thing. His sword